Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 259. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. What a week for news it's been. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know. And Jim, there's no other way to put that this week.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, wow.
Wow is right. This is, wow.
I'm in my report card weeks at school, so we're actually delaying Longbow Hunters 1 week. So that will be on next week's episode because we had to talk about this news. It's just insane what's going on. So that's what this whole episode is going to focus on, some of the big changes at DC that we've heard about coming in September. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, we're right at that transition period where they start putting up the new books for the month. So be sure to check out DCBService.com to see what is coming next. Over at InStockTrades.com, I want to shout out these deluxe hardcovers. I don't know if you've been picking up any of these, Jim, the Batman and Robin ones. Mm-hmm. Volume 3 is the Batman and Robin Must Die one, and this collects issues 13 to 16 of the Batman and Robin series and Batman the Return. On the eve of Bruce Wayne's return to Gotham City, the new Batman and Robin team that battled crime during his absence must deal with the deadly return of the Joker. Then Grant Morrison connects Batman and Robin with the best-selling Return of Bruce Wayne for the climactic showdown between Batman and the Black Glove. And in an epic tale illustrated by acclaimed artist David Finch, learn what happens to Dick Grayson after the real Batman returns. Page count, 168. Grant Morrison, Cameron Stewart, Fraser Irving, David Finch, cover artist Frank Quitely. This is regularly $24.99, 38% off, only $15.49. And those are the great deals you get over at InStockTrades.com. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. I'm not going to do an ad for Summit City Comic Con because we are joined by friend of the show, Zach Kruse, as we discuss that. So we've got a whole segment devoted to that. So check out Summit City Comic Con for more details, but you'll hear more on this episode. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
We are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over some you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
This is a loosely edited episode because I'm trying to get this out in a speedy fashion. We're actually recording this on Thursday, and my goal is to release it Thursday night. So compared to our usual shows, it's going to be a little more loosely edited. But the idea is to get this. People want to hear about this, and we all want to talk about this right now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the forum or on Facebook about this episode, this whole change. A lot of you we've already heard from, and thanks a lot for that participation. It's always great to hear your guys' thoughts on comics. So without further ado, our thoughts on the DC News.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Jim, to say this week was full of big news would be an understatement. It actually changed the entire episode we were going to do. But I don't know how we couldn't talk about this. Like, you and I were having a tough time not talking about this on the phone, and we're like, well, we can't say too much to each other because we're going to be doing this on the show. I was totally convinced that they were going to do some kind of thing where Flashpoint came back into the DC universe, and there were going to be changes on the basis of Flashpoint, where we would see characters maybe revamped that way, but there would be a lot of the current continuity sticking around, in the sense that these characters would be folded in. Kind of like what they've been doing with Wonder Woman, where the heroes have been reacting to the changes with her, but their continuity really hasn't changed. I thought it was going to be a lot of that kind of stuff, where we're getting like a major reboot here, and to the point where I'm curious to see if it's because I'm thinking now it's going to be every single character. I know they're getting #1 issues, so just to clarify, I understand that aspect of it. But when they're talking about the characters being seen a little younger, I don't think they're just going to look younger or be younger in tone and spirit and the way they're presented. I think we're going to take a step back in their continuity to the point where we're going to see a new direction for all of them. I don't know. I'm curious. What are your thoughts, Jim? Do you think this is a full system-wide reboot for everybody? Because I know they're not doing Origins for everybody.
Yeah, when I first read this thing, I was thinking, a complete clean sweep, everything changing, going back to like year ones, and I then as I started rereading that initial article and seeing some other stuff, I'm like, okay, they're not doing that. Maybe they're just going to be tweaking some stuff, modernizing it. But as more information's coming out, and we're starting to get more sneak peeks at the creative teams, who's going to be on the books and whatnot, they're going to youthen everybody. That's my term for make someone younger. Youthen. I think it works.
Okay.
You could say de-age, but I personally, I think youthen is a good term.
And it is catching on. I hear it all the time. So
yeah, hey, you know what? It's the latest buzzword that everyone's talking about.
Yesterday's de-aging is today's youthen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so they're going to be youthen everybody, and that just really has me wondering what's going to happen, where is it going to happen, who's it going to happen to, because when you start changing ages of people, you have second and third generation heroes off of them that are going to be affected. Example, if you change Bruce's age, you have now Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, Damian directly connected there. You have
Jason Todd.
Gordon, Jason Todd, Stephanie Brown. There's right there, just off of changing Bruce's age, all of those characters are affected. And
which means you have to youthen them.
Yeah. Damien's pretty youthen already. So
he's very youthen, arguably.
Any and all English teachers listening to this are right now screaming at their iPod. So, sorry.
I love this. The all youthen episode. You know what? I'm excited. Well, let me take one step back real quick, and then we'll jump right back to where we are. For those of you that are just jumping into this conversation and maybe haven't seen the news, in September, after Flashpoint is done, actually August 31st is going to be the kickoff of this, we're going to get a new Justice League of America #1, and then it's going to launch, and there's going to be 51 other titles, 52 total, that are going to be launching in September with #1 issues. So the entire superhero line is being revamped. And there's going to be new creators on all the books with new directions, and I think there's a couple of creative teams that are staying on their respective titles or working with their respective characters, but it looks like a big shift and change of creative and artists on different types of books. We're going to see characters who had books before, obviously, that I'm guessing are not going to have books, characters that haven't had books that are going to have books. So it's going to be interesting to see where this all goes. And when you and I were talking about this a couple days ago, our first reaction was we're excited but scared at the same time. And I'm still in that place because of a lot of when you're talking about, and I'm joking about your youth and thing, de-aging, whatever you want to call it, when these characters are going to be presented in a younger format, the question is, how young are they going? It doesn't sound like, I'm like with Batman. Let's focus on him right now because we're talking about him anyway. I wonder how far back they're going to go with Batman. Is it just that he's going to be younger when they shift back into the continuity, and a lot of the things that we've seen with Batman have happened to him, meaning that, are we going to have Batman Incorporated? I don't know. Who's going to be Robin? Is it going to be Tim Drake? Is it going to be Dick Grayson? Is it going to be Damian? And there is going to be a sense of progression, but, then if there's a sense of progression, then what does that mean for Dick Grayson? Is he Nightwing? Is he Batman? Where are they going with that? Because that's been a successful line, the Batman line. So whatever they do with Batman in this is a bold move. It's a risky move as far as, which direction they go with him, because this has been, sales-wise, the Batman line, pretty successful by today's standards. But I don't think they're going for by today's standards. I think they're trying to go beyond.
Yeah, they're looking to bring new people in, and revigorate, the existing fans, give them something new, give them, it's a lot of times when you have these big events, you promise, hey, things are going to change, and in the end, nothing really does. Well, this time they're going all out, and I got to commend them on the boldness of the move that they are going all out here. This isn't just going to be a halfway chance, attempt to try to pull people in. They're changing stuff, and they're taking a very big risk. So for that part, I am very excited to see what's going to happen. But as we say, I am equally terrified as to what am I going to lose? What's going to change? Because, we're talking in mentioning the Bat family. That was the first, that and Birds of Prey and, well, actually Secret Six as well, were the three things that popped in my head first. Because I was worried about, we're going to lose Dick Grayson as Batman that I love. We're going to lose Damian, who is a wonderful character. And then I'm like, okay, what happens to Tim? If I can deal with losing Damian. It'll stink because he's a great character, but he's a character that could be later reintroduced. So, all right, I can't lose Tim. But I don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing that's got me wondering. These big mysteries out there is what's going to happen to this person. What's going to happen to Barbara Gordon? Does she go back to being Batgirl? Is she Oracle? Is she going to be Oracle year one? Right now, we're going to re-see her, reformulate the Birds of Prey and reinvent herself as Oracle. I don't know. There's so much different stuff you can do with this that I gotta know more.
I don't think this is all about doing origins again, though. They've already hinted at the fact that it looks like Wonder Woman's getting a complete relaunch, which means we're probably going to see her origin and what that looks like right now. I'm guessing. I don't know if you read that the same way I did, but it looks like Wonder Woman is a complete reboot. I don't know what that looks like for Superman. I don't know what that looks like for Batman. I'm guessing the Batman end of it, there's going to be some tweaking as far as making it so Batman fits into this universe. With a lot of the questions with characters like you're mentioning, I'm guessing, I don't know if it's going to shrink down the Bat family as far as what we see now, or if we're going to get these same characters and then get an explanation as far as maybe they happen sooner than we thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it depends. I mean, I'm going to look at the cover right now of Justice League #1, and this is going to be written by Jeff Johns, with art by Jim Lee and Scott Williams, with colors by Alex Sinclair. And I'm looking at that cover right now, and that Bruce there, realistically, doesn't look too far off from the Bruce that we see now. Is he a little younger? Probably, because if you look at the characters surrounding him, they all are. But he's Batman. So, I mean, and I'm going to be curious to see what that means. We also do see Batman again, and we'll talk about that issue when we get to it, in Justice League International, swinging around. And I was guessing that was Bruce too, because it looked just like the same costume. So I'm guessing that we're not seeing two Batman on two different teams. But I don't know if you read it the same way I did.
Yeah, I did a side-by-side of the two. And I'm like, okay, where's the differences? And for me, it looks like that's the same. Whichever Batman's on that cover is also JLI. That's what it looks like to me. So, and I'm taking that this is Bruce Wayne. This is not Dick Grayson. So that, again, that is part of the stuff that's feeding my what's going to happen to this universe that I'm really enjoying.
Oh, I take it there's no way this is Dick Grayson. I mean, it's not even a question for me. That's Bruce Wayne. Because if you take a look at this team lineup, that just doesn't, putting Dick Grayson in there almost doesn't make any sense.
Well, the only thing I was thinking is with, because Cyborg's on the team, and maybe there could be that connection there, or I don't know. I was hoping.
But take a look. You've got a younger Barry Allen. Mm-hmm. You've got Hal Jordan. You've got a younger Superman, a younger Wonder Woman, a younger Aquaman. You don't put Bruce on that team? It doesn't make sense to me. I guess it could. I guess it could make sense if you do it right. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you on this because I do think it is Bruce. But there's, when I start getting nervous about losing stuff that I really enjoy, I'll start reaching and I'll start grasping and I'll start looking and look, this right here could possibly be. But when I'm looking at this Batman, his guns, his arms, those look to me like those are Bruce Wayne. That's for me, Dick Grayson always was a little bit more, streamlined. He was a little bit more of the acrobat Batman. He was still fit, but I always took it that Bruce was bigger, physically, taller as well as, broader shouldered.
Yeah, boy, it very much looks like the Bruce Wayne that Jim Lee drew in Hush.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I got to talk about this team as we're looking at this Justice League team. Love Aquaman's costume because it's similar to what we saw in Brightest Day. I don't see too many tweaks from it. I always liked that look anyway. So I mean that costume works for me without any issue at all. Wonder Woman's costume. It's got to be the one. Talk about somebody who's gone through costume changes quite a bit in the past year or so. This one I dig. I'm right out of the starting gate when I saw it. And I don't know if listeners agree, and certainly please welcome your comments on it. I don't know if maybe the last revamp softened this for me, in the sense where it opened my mind to maybe looking at what Wonder Woman wears a little differently. But this one has the right amount of traditional for me. I love the top. I love the silver and the bracelets looking like the traditional bracelets, like we're having that scheme back into it. Really works for me. I like the little armband, the Wonder Woman armband. It seems to work. I like the color scheme quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I like the little bit of a darker red to the top, and then the darker blues, along with the silver then around the waist and on the side. It's just a nice look to me for the costume. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you agree with me, or I don't know what your favorite costume out of the batch so far is, but this to me is a really good revamp.
This is a really good revamp. I'm digging this. I liked the other new costume, that she had. I thought that was, I enjoyed that. I thought it was kind of a neat, look to it. So this is close enough to that, but it's still got enough nods to the original. So this was a good meshing of the two. So I'm definitely happy with this. If they go back to one costume before, I'd be happy with that. And actually I'm even happy with the traditional outfit. I'm not going to knock the traditional. It's there, but I do like this. I think this is for me it was always about would a female superhero actually wear that costume, and I'd always kind of just in a way, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way that she's out there wearing a bikini. She's out there fighting crime in a bathing suit, where everybody else is fully clothed. She's out there. Now, granted, she doesn't need protection from the elements, so yes, but it just always, something about it always made me think, she should have pants on, or she should have a shirt on, a long sleeve jacket.
Except, wait. See, and this is where I think our reading experience is different. If you take a look at the George Perez run, where they're all wearing togas and stuff like that, I mean, it's more going to the Greek end of it. And then you take a look at the origins of that costume in that run. That costume was totally explained in a way that worked. So I'm not. And wait. And first of all, let me clarify. I dig this costume just as much as you do, the new one, the one that they just showed. And I do think part of the reason why I dig this costume so much is walking in with the mindset that this is a reboot, a full revamp of it. And knowing that they're doing this across the line, I think it makes me view it differently. My mindset is coming at it from a different standpoint, as opposed to the last time we had a revamp, where I did like that costume. I knew I preferred the jacket, versus the strappy things. I liked the jacket look. I thought it was a cool costume too. So I agree with you. If they went a generation back, I'd be cool with it. But this makes sense for this generation. But reading the Perez run, there was an explanation to that costume that really worked for me. And if you take a look at the fact that every woman on Paradise Island was wearing a toga. I'm talking about very short togas with the, and we're going back into then, more your Greek mythology times and things like that. It fits. So that did work on that end of it. So I guess I always came at that costume from a different standpoint, and I know our reading experiences of Wonder Woman are very different.
And actually, I've never read that stuff that you're talking about or any explanation of the costume. So right there is probably our big, our fundamental difference with the way we look at it. So,
but we're both in complete agreement on this look. This new look is really good. I like it. It's for me. It does have the right amount of traditional. It's a young look, which fits a young character that, they're trying to make her, she's a younger character and all that stuff. Yet it does have that majestic feel that Wonder Woman's costume needs for me. So it all works. So we're both connecting on this one. Superman's costume. This is one I'm a little tentative on. And I got to be honest with you, from the waist up, I like it. It's funny, the red pants missing. I don't know why that's such an annoyance for me. And I don't know if it's an annoyance is a strong word for it. I want to see it in costume, because I remember when you and I talked about it on the phone, my first thought was, I want to see the whole thing with the boots. What does the whole thing look like together? Let me see it in practice. Let me see it in action. This is just a static cover image. I haven't had a chance to really get my hands around it. But that's kind of and that is a traditionalist to me. I know that's what it is, and once I see it in action and see what the character's like, that will quickly soften me. But that's where my head's at right now with it. Where are you at with that costume?
Well, again, I'm not going to say I'm annoyed by it. I am curious by it, because as you're saying, I got to see him in the traditional Superman pose, see what's going on. Because I started looking at other characters. I think they're going away from having the underwear on the outside of the costume. Because, you can't really tell on Bruce in this picture, or even, when you look at the cover of the JLI, you can't really see, does he still have the the shorts on the outside. And same thing with Hal. You can't tell with Hal whether his is one solid color or not. So I'm wondering if they're completely getting rid of that look altogether and just saying, no, that's gone. Because clearly you can see Aquaman has, just green pants and the orange top. So I don't know. I got to see this in play. I got to see this, laid out and the full, actually in the comic before I can say yay or nay. But if they're going where they're getting rid of it for everybody, then I probably won't have as big a problem with it.
Yeah, and that I agree with you. I'm annoyed, like I said, I even corrected myself right away because I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm really not. I'm excited as can be so far. Hal looks like it's pretty untouched. Bruce, I like the tiny tweaks. We're used to seeing this stuff with Bruce, though, so it's kind of a non-issue. Like where we got like details on the gloves and stuff that they played around with. So probably the most comfortable character anytime they make changes like this. Barry Allen's costume. Slight little tweaks on it, especially around the headgear. There's some extra line work around the headgear. Not huge. And see, that's part of the key to me on all this. They're all clearly, like, if you isolated all of them and you didn't know they were showing us the Justice League, there's still theyese characters. But they're like lightning bolts stitched into the head gear for Barry Allen. And then we've got the chin piece.
Yeah.
And it's Barry, right? I mean...
That's what I'm taking it as.
I mean, nothing else makes sense.
But I'll be honest with you, I can never tell the difference between Barry and Wally in costume. So that could very easily be Wally, and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's Wally. Yeah, I always have an issue. For some reason, even when they started going through where they made it very obvious difference in the costume, I still kept forgetting who's who, and I had to wait to see them interact with somebody and say, okay, that's Barry. Okay, that's Wally.
Here's my question is, are certain generations of characters in danger? Like,
I think so.
Okay, here's a question. There's going to be a Kid Flash, probably. I'm assuming there's going to be a Teen Titans book. Who's going to be Kid Flash? Are we going to go to Wally? Are we going to go to Bart? And if it's a new continuity where you're doing a reboot, is it possible to skip one? Are you following me on that one?
Yeah. I'm actually thinking we may lose Bart, and I'm worried that we're going to lose Tim or we'll lose Damian. I think we're gonna lose a generation. Unfortunately, I think Bart's gonna go. Wally will be Kid Flash. Maybe Dick Grayson will be Robin, or will be Nightwing again, and Tim Drake will be Robin, and they'll do the whole Lonely Place of Dying kind of story. So maybe there would have been even a Jason Todd in there, but I'm thinking we're gonna lose Damian, which, as I said, I don't want to see that because he's a great character, but. It's, again, we're making generalizations based on just, a couple articles and some announcements. So we don't have any solid facts. So I'm not going to, rant and rave and get angry because I don't know what is actually going to happen. It's part of my combination of fear and excitement.
Yeah, see, and I should clarify that. A lot of this stuff, I'll say that they're worries. And I don't know that that's even the right word, because a lot of these are curiosities. Like, I'm curious to what Bruce's world looks like. I want to read it. And I want to see what they're going to do with it. So I don't know how worried I am about any of that. And here's the funny part. I love every character we just mentioned. I think there's ways to explain all of them existing in this world. I think there's ways to explain only some of them. And I think that one of the things that has me excited is this is not a plan that they put together last month. This has been carefully... Think about how long there's been a buzz of a potential Jeff Johns, Jim Lee book doing Justice League. That's something that's been buzzed for, I want to say, almost 2 years.
Yeah. And same thing with Gail Simone and Ethan Van Sciver.
Right.
There's been that buzz going around for over a year.
Right.
So this is something they've been planning for a while now.
So, I mean, they had to have taken a look at each of these characters and said, what makes these characters who they are? What are their comic core values? What are the things that fans get excited about with them? Because a lot of times with reboots, fans are like, oh, they don't care about us or anything like that. No, that's not true. Believe me, they are thinking about us, the long-term fans, whatever we fall in. I mean, Jim, obviously you and I have been reading DC for different amounts of time, but you're a strong, decent amount of time DC fan now. You're a long-term fan. You've been around for a few years reading this, so that's long enough. Over 5 years, actually, consistently. So, I mean, that's a long time. I'm an over 30-year fan. And see, I've seen reboots before. Now, not a full 100% line-wide reboot, but I mean, I've seen things like Man of Steel, great example. You know, John Byrne, Man of Steel, when that came out, I was reading Superman. I was reading Superman casually, but I enjoyed him. I knew who the character was, and all of a sudden, John Byrne comes in and revamps his character and makes him relevant for the 80s. And, you know, really changes quite a bit, but makes it exciting. I mean, it's like, woo, Superman was super cool. You know, then those books launched. There was a brand new Superman #1. Action Comics, I believe, kept the numbering at the time. I'm almost positive. But it was Superman that title completely relaunched. And Action Comics went to weekly. It was Action Comics Weekly. I believe that was almost immediately afterwards that it went to weekly. And it was interesting to see, you know, how Superman's world was changing, and a lot of things were being re-explored. Man of Steel actually had the first meeting between Batman and Superman, which was changed. And they even reflected on how they might have been friends under different circumstances. Well, we talked about that on the show way back when. So, I mean, but imagine reading that when it came out, and that being the new continuity. And that was cool. It was a great book to read and to see how they were, you know, tweaking Superman and making him exciting and interesting. The truth of the matter is, and I think it was Daryl Taylor who just posted something about this, talking about sales numbers. There's a lot of DC books. We've been frustrated over the last couple of years, actually the last 5 years of doing the show, of books that you and I have really dug that are interesting concepts and ideas that just never generated the sales numbers necessary to sustain them. So it wasn't the quality of the books, it was interest, getting people, and when I say interest, I mean interest for people to try it the first time and give it a few issues to get, you know, behind the concept and to see if it was for them. This has a potential to generate major noise, you know, doing all this. Cyborg, Jim, what do you think about Cyborg? I know you're a huge Cyborg fan. I am too, from, you know, Wolfman and Perez run and, you know, straight on through. But out of the two of us, I know you've always really dug the character. What do you think of the costume revamp for him?
He's one of those guys. He's kind of like, you know, with that Batman mindset where he could tweak and change his costume, and I would never really think, I wouldn't complain or think anything of it because of he's just adapting the armor. He's adapting and changing. Like Bruce has a different tweaks to his costume for various circumstances. So he's got multiple different styles of back costumes in the cave. I would think the same thing with Cyborg, where he's upgrading something or he's tweaking or revamping this. And so he'll have a little bit different appearance. For me, Cyborg can make minor changes to the costume, tweaks here, and I'd be like okay with it without any remote issue at all with it.
Besides Batman, one of the most popular lines that DC's been publishing has been Green Lantern.
Yeah.
We see that Guy Gardner's going to be in Justice League International from the cover with that, and we'll talk about the creative team on that in a minute, but we see Hal here.
Yeah.
How much of what's going on in the Green Lantern books do you think is going to stick? Because, I mean, a lot of this stuff has been hugely popular. So I'm thinking we're going to see a lot of Green Lantern continuity still in play here. What are your thoughts?
We got to, because you know the multiple color war, the different color cores are really, really popular. They announced that there was going to be the Red Lantern series going on. I can't see them getting rid of that stuff now. Maybe with the Green Lantern stuff, I can see that being an area where they can cut down some time on it. Maybe we still would have Hal being Parallax, but maybe taking out the fact that he was Spectre, or change it, or he was Spectre less time, or he was Parallax, you know, less time. Maybe they can kind of, you know, compress the Green Lantern line down and keep most of the stuff, I would think.
Well, so, here's a question I have. Considering comic timelines, I do think there's a possibility that some of these characters are going to have a lot of the things we've already seen happen to them, but they just happened earlier in their life than we're used to. Meaning in the sense that I wouldn't be in shock if it looked like Hal's continuity is completely intact.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see them going the other route and going, you know, where some of these things maybe didn't happen to Hal. Like you said, maybe he didn't become a Spectre, maybe it's something like that. Okay, maybe that's right. Maybe that is the way they're going to go. But I also could see the other route where some of these characters, just because of the way that they want to work that character, those things happen to them, but they're just, you know, they happen earlier in their life.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's been Green Lantern, and these things happen in a much more compressed time frame than we're used to. Because we don't see them on a daily basis, these characters, if that makes sense. So you could easily say, well, he had a really bad year. Or a bad couple of years, and look at all these things that happened to him. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'd have zero issue either way. If they cut some of those things out and say these didn't happen to Hal yet, or didn't happen at all, and now there's new possibilities for the character. I do 100% agree with you. We're going to see an emotional spectrum, because I do think that Red Lantern book is still a go. I don't think it's an accident we haven't seen anything with it. I think when they really came up with the timeline and decided this is when we're going to be a go with it, that's why Batwoman got moved to September. I think we are going to still see Batwoman in this lineup. We haven't seen any of the Bat books and what they're doing with them yet, but I do think we are still getting Batwoman out of this. So I'm very curious to see what that book's going to look like. In reflection to, we've already seen in her origin in the past, her interactions with Bruce and with Dick Grayson. So I wonder what, how she's going to fold into this, if that makes sense. Fairly easy to do with her, though. Oh,
big time. Yeah, I think with her, you got a little tweaks here, just her first meetings with Bruce and or Dick, if he's even around, which I'm hoping he will be. But with her, she has a nice, well-contained story arc within her character that could be pushed in or moved around at any different time frames. She's got a nice, already contained universe. I think we'll see very little tweaking with her. I hope, because I really dig the backstory they told about her. I'm really liking the character, and she's another one of those where I'm not worried about losing her, because her story is so adaptable and can be plugged in at any time.
I think we're going to see in August a lot of wrapping up of things that we would be questioning by the time we hit September. In the sense, for those of us that have been readers, we're going to get storylines wrapped up and things like that, because August is the ending of all these books, so they're going to wrap up those storylines and put us in a place where we can then jump onto these books, regardless of what they're rebooting or revamping. So at least we'll be done and satisfied with those stories and see where they're going to go from here with these characters. So I don't know. I don't think we're going to see a lot of heavy focus on the characters' past, in the sense that to establish for us continuity. I think we're going to learn a lot of what their status quo is now, if that makes sense. So everybody reading it knows this is where this character's at. Doesn't matter what you've been reading. You're right on board. This is where the character's at, and this is where they're going. This is their adventures. And I think it's going to be a lot of that type of thing, which makes sense, because you don't want to all of a sudden spend your first issues of all these titles establishing continuity for new people. Because really, September's supposed to be a launch point to bring in new readers and to make something exciting for the current fans. So to find that balance, you really have to focus less on the past and focus on this is where we are and this is where we're going.
You got to hit the ground running, and you got to hit hard, hit heavy, hit fast. And I think we're going to see that in these titles. Just, you don't want to sit back and just do this is where he came from. This is on every single one. Now, there'll probably be a couple where within that first issue we'll get their backline and their story, their origin, but I can't see them doing it on every one.
Well, this Justice League team is going to be a 14-member team. Mm-hmm. They've already established. So we're seeing up here like this big 7 right now kicking off the starting gate. But the team's going to gradually build and double in size as it's going along. Are there characters that you want to see on the team that aren't featured in this picture? Because I know a lot of fans have been, listeners of our show have been saying this is the team that they want. And wait, to be honest with you, I'm a huge fan of these characters, so to see them on there, I'm going to throw out a name right away, Green Arrow. I'd love to see Green Arrow on this team.
Yeah. I'd like to see an arrow shooter on there. And I'm saying arrow shooter in that I wonder, are we going to get the return of Roy? Are we going to get the return of him? Because if we're changing stuff around, are we going to keep the whole Cry for Justice story arc that happened?
No.
Maybe his daughter may come back from the dead.
I'm wondering, let me clarify my no there. I'm guessing what we're going to see, if we're going to see an arrow shooter on this team, it would be Ollie, not Roy. If we're going to see Roy, we would see Roy on a different generation team. We'd be more likely to see Roy on International, for example, than we would see him here. I might be wrong, though, because we got Cyborg here. But I don't think we're going to see Roy coming back from the things that we've seen lately from him. I don't know. You know what? I really shouldn't say that because I don't know that I'm necessarily thinking we have to throw a ton of things out the window for this. That's what I'm most curious about is like, because let me tell you one book that's got me excited. And let's start talking about some of the books because I think a lot of these discussions I'm dancing around because I'm trying not to jump to these. So a book that has me questioning what's going on here in a good way. I did not see this coming. There's been rumors for ages. Everybody on the show knows that Jim and I are huge fans of Gail Simone. She's my favorite writer. There's been this Gail Simone and Ethan Van Sciver project that's been teased for well over a year now. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And I did not think it was going to be the Fury of Firestorm. And I'm not going to butcher the artist's name. The last name is Cinar, and the first name is Yildiray, and I apologize because I don't want to butcher that name at all. But it's Jason Rush and Ronnie Raymond, two high school students, worlds apart, and now they're drawn into a conspiracy of super science that bonds them forever in a way that they can't explain or control. Now, here's the one that has me curious there because my first thought when I heard it was those two was that they are being pulled together from the whole Brightest Day stuff and everything that happened with Blackest Night and all that. But now when they're being introduced as like two high school students, worlds apart, is this a full relaunch of them? I don't know, because that could be a full relaunch with the way that's being explained. And if you take a look at that cover, and it has me excited either way. You take a look at that cover with the two costumes that they have. Wow. And
yeah. I don't know what's going on with this one. And it's actually, we're sitting there talking, just did not see this one being the project. I was actually thinking it was going to be Plastic Man.
I did too.
Yeah. That's what I had my money on. And so when I saw it, when you first told me that I pulled this up, I'm like, holy crud, because when I read it to high school students, I'm thinking they're doing a full reboot, full relaunch, going back to high school. Going to bring the Firestorm Matrix in that way, and it'll be two high school kids merging instead of a high school kid and the Professor Stein merging.
Well, now here's my question. We see two different variations of the costume, and the two of them with their arms together, and then we see that Firestorm-looking thing in the background. Now, this is why I have a question. Now, is it they each individually look like that? Like when they power up and they can both be Firestorm, like kind of a buddy cop thing? Or is it when one's in control, they look like the Jason Rush side? When the other's in control, it looks like the Ronnie Raymond side, if that makes sense? I guess the reason why I'm even questioning that, at first I thought that's what we were getting, and then that thing in the back is a bad guy? But now I'm wondering, when you see the two arms put together, are the two of them able to merge to make that guy? Is that guy another form of theirs? Or is that a big enemy of theirs? I don't know. I'm insanely curious. And I don't want to know the answer right now. I want to read it in the book. But I love that this cover has me so curious that I'm actually thinking about what could possibly be going on here. I do think that it's going to be curious. I like the costume design, first of all, because I love Firestorm in general. And I've loved his various versions of the costumes. And this is a design that it's classic. It works. It's a nice nod to Firestorm from the past. But I don't know. What do you think's going on? Do you have any speculation of what you think is going on there?
As an initial thought was, when the one's in charge, he looks the one way. The other's in charge, he looks the other way. And that's what I was initially thinking. But same thing with you. When I started taking a closer look, when I actually zoomed in on the cover, and I don't know anymore. I'm kind of leaning towards maybe there's two Firestorms and their powers combine to create the Fury, of Firestorm. Or, I don't know. I keep thinking, and I'll think one thing, then I'm like, wait, what about this? What about this? I don't think that's a villain, and I don't think it's a throwaway. I definitely think that whatever that big, the meaner looking Firestorm, we're going to see him in the comic. Whether that is what Firestorm looks like, or that's a merging of the two, or I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm really curious. This is something I want to see. This is something where I have no issues with them really looking like they're doing a full revamp and changing things around. Because while I like the characters in the other Firestorms, I didn't have a really strong emotional attachment to them. I enjoyed the stories I was reading, but if with a complete change coming through, as long as we got a good creative team on it, I'll be happy with it. So. This is one of those situations where I'm sitting here going, yeah, it could be this, yeah, it could be that. Okay, cool. This is one where I'm only looking at positive stuff coming out of it.
Have you ever been through a complete reboot of a character that you've been enjoying that you've read?
No. Actually, I've never really had that problem where, a complete, a little bit with the Superman when he was the Superman blue and red and that kind of change, but that wasn't a complete reboot. That was just a changing in his powers.
Yeah, same character though, and it wasn't like his continuity dropped out.
Right.
I did with Man of Steel, great example of that. Green Arrow with Longbow Hunters, and that it was kind of a continuity change for him. I mean, in the sense it was a re-explanation of him, his history and all that. Not a full. It was kind of a soft reboot, and that'll be on our next episode. We'll talk about that one. But a Wonder Woman. With the, I read her casually, more in the Justice League, but I did read her book casually beforehand, and her reboot when George Perez took over was huge. I mean, it was a complete restart of the character, and that was wonderful. I've seen it, then Batman's origins being retold with like Year One and stuff like that, and then post Crisis, there were changes to characters. I know there were rumors of them rebooting and relaunching everything post-Crisis. They didn't do it. They changed some things, but not others. They had that cool Legends miniseries and stuff like that where they did make changes. 0 Hour's done stuff like that. I've seen it happen at Marvel. We've seen Captain America completely rebooted, then unrebooted, and stuff like that. And that's not a Marvel knock. I actually, I liked, they did a whole Heroes Reborn thing, which I liked initially at the start. I got to admit, and this isn't a knock on it, budget-wise, I wasn't able to finish reading the whole thing, so I don't know. I know that writers changed and creative teams changed on some of the books during that time, and I don't know what that was like afterwards, how it went, but I liked the initial kickoff of that, and I quite enjoyed it. So I've seen, a number of characters. I mean, Valiant, when I read the whole Valiant line, they were bought out by the video game company at the time, Acclaim, and they bought the characters for the purpose of using them for video game properties. And they completely relaunched the line. So, like, a character like Exo-Man of War became a completely different character. Turok was relaunched, that whole line was. And it was a line but then we got some unique characters like Quantum and Woody and stuff like that out of it. So, I've been through revamps before, and in all cases, the same feelings that I'm feeling right now with you. There were some things that I absolutely adored. There were other things that took a little while for me to get used to. But there was always that nice balance of, there was a title that all of a sudden just I'm like, wow, I never was into this character this way. And all of a sudden now they've made me see this character in a way that I just couldn't fathom it. So it'll be interesting to see your reaction to this. We're going in September for listeners of the show. We're going to kind of go back to our show's roots and do something we haven't done since we started the podcast. When we started the podcast, Jim and I went through and did every 1 year later title and talked about our thoughts and feelings on them. We're going to do this with these books. We're going to do all 52 of them in at least relatively around their release. So we can kind of go through and review them and chat about them and talk about which ones are our favorites, because I'm sure between the two of us there's going to be different ones. But back to talking about some of these books. So we got Justice League of America we've talked about. We talked about Fury of Firestorm, which is a win-win to me because it's, Gail Simone, Ethan Van Sciver. It looks like they're co-plotting, right? Because it says writers, Ethan Van Sciver and Gail Simone. So I'm going to be curious to see
I was surprised by that. I always thought when it was going to be a Gail Simone Van Sciver team up, I was thinking she was going to be the writer, he was going to be doing the artwork. So that's another swerve that I didn't realize was going to happen with their team up. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. I'm wondering how that's going to play out and where this is going to go with.
Now, Wonder Woman, we've got Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang, and I apologize for butchering that, but we saw him on things like Green Arrow, Black Canary, right? Wasn't he the artist initially on that one? almost thinking when we go back to there. But we see the cover artwork from him on there, his version of it, which looks to me like everything I want to see from Wonder Woman. I mean, right away, she got a sword in hand.
She's got a bloody sword in hand.
Yeah, bloody sword in hand, and she's got the bracelets up, knocking away arrows and stuff. I mean, this is just, it's Wonder Woman. Want to see her fighting. I like the outfit look on there. It's a nice look. I mean, Brian Azzarello on Wonder Woman, the last thing in the world I thought I would see. A writer, though, who Doc Savage is a great example of a book. 100 Bullets, huge fan of. The Joker hardcover we talked about on the show, how great that was. Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, I know you read that. Great book. I was a fan of First Wave. I will say this about First Wave. The First Wave miniseries, it took me a while, like after the issues were released, I went back through and reread everything and really dug it. I thought it was a great series, a great concept. I love the whole pulpy stuff. Spirit was something I enjoyed right from the beginning, which wasn't him. Doc Savage is the one, though, that it took me a while to get into, but once I did and I got my head around all the characters, I really grew to love that series as it was going on. So I'm hoping that his Wonder Woman delivers like those books I mentioned, because all of those were titles that I'm very glad I picked up. They were well worth my time. They were well worth my investment in as far as reading and rereading and wrapping my head around what he was trying to do. And there's always a big payoff to his books. So, him on Wonder Woman's the last thing that I thought I was going to see. But his 100 Bullets characters, he had a number of female leads in there that he wrote extremely well, and they were very powerful characters. So I'm excited for seeing him on Diana. I think he will do an edgy Diana, what I think Diana is, and what in a lot of the runs that we've seen previously with Diana, I think we're going to see what we've seen there in his book. I think he's going to get to the core root of the character, everything that we've enjoyed, and hopefully this will generate some buzz and get some people reading Wonder Woman that haven't before. Because I think there's a lot of people, if they gave the character a chance, so many great creative teams have worked on this character. There's a lot to love about her, and that looks for a cover. That's a great one to bring me in.
Yeah, and I really do enjoy his writing style, and the stuff what he's worked on has had that nice, as you said, it has that nice edge to it. But for me, when Gail did her Wonder Woman run, and they really brought back the Amazon code, and it was the code of honor and the code of conduct, I'm wondering if we're still going to get that style of character where she just doesn't handle it with her fists, but she's able to to handle it with her mind as well, and whether we would get the diplomat as well as the warrior. That's what I'm wondering what we're going to see, because we've seen him write female characters that were strong like that were independent, that were they were able to strength of character they had. So I know he can do that with a female character. Now I'm just wondering, will they do that with Wonder Woman? Will they bring that part of it, or will she be more of the Amazon warrior, or will it be Amazon princess, or are they throwing the whole Amazon thing out completely? That's my big questions as to, this is another one where I trust the creative team.
Wait, hold on. Look at that cover. Look at that sword. There's no Amazon anything getting thrown out the window. I mean, no way. So, I mean, I'm saying that, echoing your concerns as far as what I would want to see. But that sword so totally says to me, Amazon. That's intact. Yeah. One of the things I want to see out of these titles, and it's a wish that I have, because we're speculating on all this, so our excitement right now is coming from speculation. Until we actually see the books, I'm not going to know how to feel 110%. But one of the things, you mentioned Gail's run on Wonder Woman, one of the things I like that she did was, not only did she show that she understood the character of Wonder Woman and the core values that makes Wonder Woman a cool character, but she also took us someplace new, like with the lasso, that whole bit with the lasso where she told us mentally how that worked. That was something I hadn't seen before, that kind of mental connection with the lasso. And it's something I'm excited to see what she and Ethan Van Sciver do with Firestorm. Not only how they get to the core of what makes Firestorm a cool character, but introducing us to something we never understood about Firestorm. You know what I mean? Taking that in a new direction. I want to see that with Wonder Woman. What are some things we didn't understand about her before that we're going to get to know now about her and how she's relevant today? And that's what I think all these books are going to do. Aquaman. Aquaman #1's coming out. It's Jeff Johns and the Green Lantern and Brightest Day collaborator Ivan Rice. And I know one of the things in interviews that Jeff Johns has mentioned was that he's going to show us new things about Atlantis and the underground world and Aquaman's relationship to it. And I'm very curious to see that because I one of the things I've liked about his exploration of and the whole team of Green Lantern's exploration has been that we've learned new things about what space is like and what planets are like and political structures and all those types of things with these different character races in the outer space universe of DC. Think about how much of Earth is water. What's that going to be like for Aquaman? I'm excited to see explorations of that and how it applies today. And they did say one of the things when they were doing the interviews that these characters are going to be reacting to issues that affect people today. So, it's going to be grounded in the real world. I mean, obviously it's superhero as well, so we're going to be getting cool, high-intensity, amazing, mind-blowing superhero action. But besides that, we're going to actually, be able to connect with these heroes in their way that they connect to our world and react to it. I'm excited to see these characters reacting to those events in the world. Brightest Day had a lot of that with Aquaman, where there was echoes of, hey, this is a very today real world issue that he was dealing with, and I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what life is like under the sea. Under the sea.
Yeah, boy, I want to euthanize you.
Euthan, not euthanize. Euthanize is something really bad.
Oh, okay. Oh, I made a mistake. A little slip of the tongue.
Don't eat anything at Sean's house. Okay. Here, Jim, we made you a special cupcake just for you.
Flash. This is an interesting one. Francis Manapul writing The Flash and sharing scripting and art duties with Brian Buccellato. One of the things I like about the sharing it is I know that one of the issues with The Flash was getting that book out on time. I don't know what end that worked on. I don't know if it was art or how that worked. But I like the idea of putting a creative team, because this is something we saw with Batwoman was a solution that they were working on there. I think it's really critical for all these books, when they're released, to then be released and published on time. And I know that that's not, there's issues that creep up, and sometimes it's not always 100% possible. But one of the things that I would encourage with this is to really put something in place where if you've got artists who are really talented and produce spectacular looking visuals, put in natural breaking points for those artists when possible. And I'm preaching to the choir. I know that they're having these discussions and doing all that. But I'm saying as a fan, it's what I would like to see. I'm not against fill-in artists. I never have been. I want to see those books delivered on time, especially when you're introducing new concepts to me, because I don't want 2 or 3 months taken away. And that was something that happened with The Flash. I've been enjoying The Flash where I think I should have been loving The Flash. Mm-hmm. And it's not quality. I think there was that spacing out did affect what I think should have been a mind-blowing run for me.
Yeah, when I'm looking at The Flash and just thinking about where it's going to go and what's going to happen, this is the one. This was kind of the one where I at first initially didn't think that much was going to change. I was thinking, yeah, maybe his mom would still be alive or something like that. And then as I started thinking more and more, again, second, third generation, even previous generation, with Jay Garrick. Flash is a character that I'm really, really getting excited about. I enjoyed the character. I enjoyed some of the stuff, but this is another one of those things where this event is getting me, wanting to see more, wanting to get to know Barry better, and, seeing where it's going to go. So I'm kind of really, this is one of those titles I'm really looking forward to seeing, especially because the Flash has such a direct connection to the big event that's leading into this. So this is the one where, for me, this one's got to be on time. This one's got to be hitting, and it's got to be hit the ground running.
What has your thoughts been on the Flash book? Like the current one that's been going on? Where are you at on it?
I've been enjoying it, and I've liked seeing just, getting to know Barry, but I wasn't as passionate about it until Flashpoint started going through, and I started seeing that we're going to get some massive changes. Going through Blackest Night, it got me introduced to Barry. I was like, oh, okay, he's a pretty cool character. And then as his series, is going on, I'm like, oh, okay, there's some flaws to him. There's some true hero stuff to him. There's some little bit, if I went through the kind of stuff that he went through, I could see myself having those kind of reactions. So he had a very humanistic feel to him. So I was like, okay, I can understand why people were very passionate about Barry, and but on the same side, I started to understand Wally, the love for Wally. When I saw all the stuff happen to my Flash, Bart. So I was like, okay, I get everybody's attachment. I get why you have this passion towards your Flash. So going forward now, in a way, if Barry is the only Flash out there, I probably will be okay with it. I think this is probably the character that I'm going to have I'll have the least emotional reaction letting go of a character, but it's still one of those things where I don't want to lose them, if that makes sense.
It does. You know what? I'm going to tell you, I don't have an issue. First of all, if they kept all of them, I'm a Wally junkie. I love Wally. So if they kept him, I'm cool. I'm talking about where they keep him as a Flash too. If they move him back to Kid Flash, I'm cool with that as well. If they keep Bart with Kid Flash, I'm cool with that because I like all the characters. I'm with you. I don't know, what direction they're going with that, and I want to wait and see on it. I do think what's happening at DC though recently has been we've got so many of these characters where there is like multiple versions of them that it's almost too much.
Yeah,
and I want to clarify that in the sense that I've been enjoying everything I've been reading. I've been enjoying the characters. But I wouldn't mind them kind of paring down and really focusing heavy on one of them. But yet keeping those characters there as a not. Like, I liked kind of the idea of Wally kind of retiring and being with the family, but we would see him from time to time when he pops in on missions. I like that concept. Because, I love Wally and I like the idea that he's around and there's opportunities to do things with him then. And I know there's a lot of Wally fans. I am a huge Wally fan. I've got every issue of Wally's books. So it's don't kill the messenger here on this one. But I do think if you're going with Barry, you really need to focus on that and go in that direction. I think Barry's a character that in the last year I would have liked to seen a speedier release of his books because I think it would have connected me more to them. It would have taken something that, like I said, I enjoyed and made it something where I was like, wow, that is awesome. And I want to feel like it's awesome again with The Flash. So, enjoyable book that I want to feel it's awesome again. So I'm excited for this. And I like that it looks like there's a plan in place to make that possible, to keep that book coming out regularly. I waited. I've been a good boy. You know what book I'm going to talk about now. Hawkman. The Savage Hawkman. Tony, this and another one. Talking about another one that came out of nowhere that shocked me, but I'm excited about. I thought this was supposed to be James Robinson, so I'm hoping we do. I'm a James Robinson fan, so I'm hoping we see some announcements for him somewhere else on something. We've only seen 11 titles here, so I'm curious to see what's going to happen. And again, going back to, are we seeing that generation de-aged, or are we going to see possibly that generation still around? Because it does, when we get to Justice League International, I'll tell you why I'm still wondering. Because if we take a look at the age of some of these characters, I don't know that we're throwing everything out the window. A lot of these second and third generation characters might still be around when this is done, but we'll talk about that. But anyway, Hawkman, we got Tony Daniel with artist Philip Tan, and from Green Lantern, Agent Orange, and The Outsiders. And Carter Hall's skill at deciphering lost languages has led him to a job with an archaeologist who specializes in alien ruins. But will the Doctor's latest discovery spread an alien plague through New York City? No matter the personal cost, Carter Hall must don his cowl and wings and become the new Savage Hawkman to survive. Now, I'm questioning, are we going to see Carter as we know him? Are we going to see a brand new take on Hawkman? I don't know. Tony Daniel is somebody who, his Batman run has just been terrific. he's only gotten better as he's gone along. The only, and I don't want to say it's a stumbling block, I enjoyed Battle for the Cowl. I didn't think his Batman solo run, I think, has been mind-blowingly cool. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do with Hawkman. I think he's a writer who's only gotten better as time's gone on. And I like Battle for the Cowl, so I don't want to make it seem like I didn't. I think that his Batman run, his actual Batman run, was that much better than all of that. I thought that was, his Batman stuff has been terrific.
And when I read this, I read it completely as we're getting a change in the history.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're clearing just the confusion and the clutter that was Hawkman's origin, and boom, throwing it here. Maybe they could use this later on to reintroduce, some of the back origin, but I think they're using this to cut out. I'm going to say they're going to cut out the alien stuff. Maybe they'll keep there's
alien stuff right away. Wait,
but I'm thinking, when I say the alien stuff, I mean the fact that in part of the thing, Hawkman was an alien. I think they're throwing that completely out. But I'm thinking maybe we're going to see the reincarnations, maybe coming through. But I think this is going to be a reboot, just a reimagining, reworking of who is Hawkman.
Yeah, and that even if they don't do that, Jim, Kadar Hall is actually a different character than Carter Hall, and they've established that in the previous explanations of him. So that alien Hawkman was actually a different Hawkman from Carter Hall that we've seen. And it gets really complicated, but there's nothing wrong with simplifying it and getting to, this is where Carter... See, I don't necessarily know, and this is somewhere where I don't know that we're necessarily going to see full reboots for everybody, as much as saying, this is who this character is now, and this is where they're going. And I think what we're going to see is some situations, and I don't know that Hawkman's going to fit to what I'm saying right now, but I think we're going to see some situations where, rather than worrying about rebooting them in the sense that let's retell the origin or anything like that, we're going to give you your status quo now as far as who they are, where they live, how they operate, what their modus operandi is, and just go forward and tell good stories with that character, and not get so bogged down in explaining their backstory. I don't think you need to with every single character.
Yeah. Oh, agree. Definitely agree. They can just move forward and rock and roll. Now, the one thing I do think is going to happen, the archaeologist who specializes in alien ruins, I'm going to guess that it's going to be Shair.
Oh, cool.
That's my guess. With looking at this, I think that would be a neat little way to introduce the two of them and kind of introducing. Are they these long lost loves? Are they this? Just kind of throw it out there right from the get go.
And I have, let me clarify this too. Taking everything I said, I have zero issue whether we do what I just said and this is the same Carter Hall we've been reading, but he moves forward, or they do a full reboot. I don't care. I want to read good Hawkman. So if they full reboot him, and this is a character I adore. I don't care if they do a full reboot. If they want to do a full reboot and kind of simplify his origin and stuff like that and just get to great Hawkman storytelling, I'm all for that. I think he's a great character. I think he's somebody that a lot of people have missed. And, I mean, missed in the sense that they haven't given the character a shot. So whatever they do, I hope that this book, gets some readers and people get a chance to see how cool a concept this can be. Hawkman. I'll tell you one of my worries with the book, and I'll be 100% honest with it. Looking back on Outsiders, that was a book that was plagued with, it didn't come out like when it was supposed to always, and I think it hurt that book. I love Philip Tan's artwork. I think it's great. I hope there's something in place to make sure this book comes out on time. Again, going back to what I said before, because I think when you take a character like Hawkman, that character has to come out on time if you're introducing new readers to that character. So, and I don't mean that as a knock on Philip Tan, because I don't know what happened, but the Outsiders, am I right? Outsiders missed we had some delays on that book?
I think so.
It was one of those storylines, because I enjoyed Outsiders. So this isn't a knock on Outsiders in any way. My big problem with Outsiders was I wanted to see what we're seeing, like in the current issue, the one that was just released. We're finally seeing some resolution with what's been going on with the two teams, and a lot of the suspicions that you and I voiced at the beginning of all that seem to be coming true. And I'm liking that. I mean, I love the journey, and I love seeing that go there. I just felt like that journey was something that we should have gotten to that already. And I don't think that's a knock on the storytelling or the art. I think it's just it felt like that book was delayed on some level. It didn't come out when it was supposed to, and we should have seen the conclusion of that particular arc a lot sooner than we did. And I might be wrong on that, but I do think that was a book that was delayed along the way. It just felt like it. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Hawkman. But Philip Tan, giving credit where credit's due, I click up that cover. I really like the look of his Hawkman. I like the revamped look. He looks bad. I love it looks like the claw of Horus, in a new version of it, whatever. I love the whole axe thing he's swinging, the gloves, everything. He just looks like that's what I want to see from my Hawkman. And I'm very curious to see how he does it. Very pretty artwork, and it's something that I want to see. So it's not meant to be a negative. It's just a book that I want to see on time, and I'm not blaming him for Outsiders necessarily as much as I just felt like that storyline, I wanted to see it conclude quicker. But an artist I really enjoy. Yeah. And, oof.
And the fact that the title is The Savage Hawkman really has me thinking he's going to be bashing some heads in. So, this isn't going to be a tea-sipping, kinder, gentler Hawkman. This is going to be someone who's going to be, resolving the issue with the business end of a battle axe. So that's another thing that I want to see that in Hawkman. I am a Hawkamaniac, so I want to see it, and let's have some fun with it. This is the kind of a guilty pleasure in that, seeing him bashing people's head, see him have that rage and that power. It's some of the stuff that I enjoyed about Wolvie when he would go into berserker mode, where you're just like, oh yeah, someone's going to get hurt right now, and I want to have those moments.
And just back to and I'm gonna wrap up with this as far as the on time thing. My worry about that is not for me, because if I'm enjoying the book, I'm going to stick around. In the sense that I'll wait, and I'm buying enough titles that if a book slips a month or something like that, I'm still there. But the problem is when that happens, those books, I end up watching that book get canceled a few months down the road. Yeah. And if it's something that I'm enjoying and I've been glad to wait for, it gets very disappointing when that book then is dropped. Outsiders is a great example of this. I think it's a book that, as it's built through, as the storyline's coming into a crescendo, I really feel that I've been, the ride's starting to pay off now. And it's something that I think it lost some readership along the way because of issues like that. And I think it's a book that could have had a bigger readership if it had been a little more timely. So I hate seeing things and concepts that I'm enjoying. Because one of the things with Outsiders is I always wanted to see this storyline come to a conclusion and then see where the team goes from there. And we're not going to get to see that. No.
We're going to get the conclusion of the story, right. And then who knows what's going to happen. Maybe the Outsiders will be one of the books that survive. Maybe they won't. We don't know yet.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. It's going to be curious to see what goes on with that. But Green Arrow #1, J.T. Krull, sticking around on that. Art by Dan Jurgens. So
yes.
Woof. And the cover for issue 1's by Brett Booth, who's currently doing Justice League. Looks like he's going back to being a billionaire playboy. I don't know how much of the current continuity is going to stay with him. I'm ready to see Ollie being... I love the costume, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see Ollie being Green Arrow again, being a superhero. I like seeing him, kind of under the gun here in the opening shot. I do like the costume tweak. What do you think of that? It is kind of a... I don't want to throw in Smallville because that almost is oversimplifying because of the fact that we've gone a little bit more modern with his costume. But one of the things I did like about talking about functional costumes in Smallville was that it was functional. But I like that it's a hybrid of a comic book Green Arrow costume and something a little bit more modern, with a guy who would be using technology in his arrows. Which definitely those arrows, the arrow that he's firing right there is certainly a techie arrow.
And that looks like an exploding arrow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Ollie is, I think we're not going to see too much in major change-wise. With Ollie, it's the big question is going to be his love life, his kids, his, second and third generation. As we mentioned before, with Roy, with Mia, with him and Dinah, there's going to be what's going to happen there. That's my big question, is the Arrow family. I think Oliver Queen, when I pick up Green Arrow #1, is going to feel like the Ollie Queen I'm reading now. It's going to feel like I'm going to be comfortable with this character. It's just, will he have that extended family? And that's, for me, that's the biggest question I have regarding Green Arrow. I think, one, this should, J.T. Krule's a great writer. I love his style. So I'm happy there. Dan Jurgens, good artist. All right, I'm happy with the creative team on this. I'm happy where I think the character is going to go. I just have questions that I want answered regarding the extended family. Because I don't know if they're necessarily going to undo Cry for Justice, but this could be a way they could do it. And for my personal opinion, my personal choice would be not to undo Cry for Justice. Again, I don't like to see a little small child get killed, but I thought the way the story was told, the way it affected the characters, just the power of that whole story arc, I wouldn't want to see it undone just because it was this great piece of his life. Just like with, if they bring Roy back, if they bring Speedy back, or if they bring him back as Arsenal or Red Arrow, and he still has both his arms, and I don't know.
Jim, I gotta stop you here for a second.
Okay.
See, I think you're getting really caught up on that these books are going to be addressing a whole bunch of stuff from the past. I don't see it that way at all. Like, I don't think Cry for Justice is going to be addressed in this book. I think we saw, like, Green Arrow go through those paces and come to a conclusion of that in what was going on in J.T. Krule's run in the current book. I don't think this is going to be a focus in this book at all. I think we're going to be seeing a Green Arrow who's out of the starting gate, a superhero that's, people are going to know who Green Arrow is, what he's all about, and where he's going from there. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of, Roy's arm back and Mia's back, and then Leon's back and all that. I think if they introduce a Speedy, it's not going to be, it could be Mia, it could be Roy. Who knows who it's going to be or how they're going to go that route. Or, if they do an Arsenal or anything like that. I don't think we're going to see a whole bunch of, though, going back and saying, because I think that Cry for Justice thing kind of came to a conclusion, on Ollie's end I'm talking about. Let me clarify that. On Ollie's end, in this whole Brightest Day bit where he was protecting the forest, and, he kind of went back to the land, kind of had to rediscover himself again, kind of hit rock bottom. But I'm looking at this guy right here. This does not look like the guy that's going to be dealing with a whole lot of Cry for Justice. I don't think they're going to do that to newer readers that are coming in. I guess that's the point. If this is an initiative that is supposed to be longtime fan-friendly, but then also new reader-friendly, are they going to bog us down with a lot of that? I don't think so. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I don't think they necessarily have to contradict it either.
Yeah, so that's where I'm wondering what's going to happen. They could introduce, have Green Arrow there and then have Roy as Speedy, and if it's a young version of Roy with 2 arms, that longtime fans know, okay, that's not in continuity anymore. That's done with. If they have Ollie with Mia as Speedy, then it's okay. That's who Speedy is, and we still don't know about Roy yet. We got to wait and see. Maybe he'll be in a different title. That's where we'll get our answers there. So it's when I'm throwing it's part of it is when I look at the Arrow family, I do look and I do enjoy that Arrow family. So I'm hoping, while I know I'm going to enjoy the Green Arrow Ollie Queen stories I'm confident in the creative team, I do want to see the extended family, just as much as I want to see the extended family of Batman.
See, and you haven't read a lot of Green Arrow where there wasn't the Arrow family in the book.
Exactly.
Like the run post Longbow Hunters, Dinah was in it, but a lot of it was Ollie. I mean, and there was no heavy focus on like there being Speedy or anything like that. And I love straight-up Green Arrow stories with Ollie, where we focus on Ollie. And I don't see anything, at least from the initial blurb, to indicate this is going to be an Arrow family book. Not to say there might not be a Speedy, but, you're sitting there able to fight the most powerful supervillains in the universe with nothing but a bow and arrow. How do you make that statement and then say, and we're going to have 4 other people with him? It just doesn't... I don't see that being a focus. I'm not saying that down the line they might not introduce that, and that doesn't mean they won't introduce a sidekick and a partner. But I'm looking at a lot of these books, and there seems to be a focus at kind of focusing these titles, focusing the universe on certain characters and saying, we're really going to flesh out these characters and really get people excited about these characters. And we're going to leave team books for a lot of your team dynamics. That's not to say there aren't going to be a supporting cast and there isn't possibility of a sidekick or anything like that, but I don't think, at least looking at that right now, there's nothing in the blurb to indicate to me that we're going to see an Arrow family. And I don't want to make it seem like I don't like the Arrow family. I do. The same books you were, when you were reading Winnick's run, and that was your kind of jumping into the Arrow universe, that was awesome. Totally outstanding stuff. But if you look back at the history of the character, and even going back to the beginning of that run, it wasn't always Arrow family. You know, a lot of that, the focus was Ollie, maybe sometimes teaming up with his son. Then Mia came later on and became a part of it. And I don't know. I'm torn. I'm very torn on that. I like the idea of a Green Arrow with a Speedy, but I think you need to establish Ollie first.
Right. Yeah, and let me just make sure I completely clarify so everyone knows where I'm at. If they don't introduce these other characters, I'm not going to feel at loss. I do enjoy Ollie Queen stories. I do enjoy, as I said, I'm confident in the creative team that if I only get Ollie, I will enjoy the story. I'm sure I'll get a really cool Green Arrow story. Just again, it's our reading experience, and I really came in with the Arrow family, and my coming back to the comics was really just that whole team dynamic, and I was really loving just the way they're playing off each other. I was like, this is a cool, again, Green Arrow is one of those characters where if I practiced and I trained, I could become Green Arrow. And he's the kind of guy that I was like, you know what? I'd hang out with this guy. I'd hang out with, Roy and B. These would be my friends. So, when I say that I'd like to see that, and I want to see that, it's just because I enjoyed the character so much. If I don't get it, I'm not going to consider it a failure or be angry about it. Green Arrow is the character, is the main character. And I, fully understand and will fully enjoy just a story just about him. It's just, whenever I start looking at these things, the first thought I'm always thinking, with Green Arrow is the Arrow family, because I enjoyed those characters so much.
Wait, and Jim, let me clarify something else, too. We don't have to agree on that.
Yeah.
I'm saying where we want it to go, and I mean, that doesn't have to be. We're speculating here. I don't know what's going to be in the book. We could open up the book, and there could be 10 members of the Arrow family in the book. I don't know. And I mean, they could sell me on that direction. Not 10 members, but I mean, you know what I mean. They could sell me on that direction.
10. Yeah. I want 10.
Yeah, you wanted the Arrow gang.
Yeah. I want a blue arrow.
Just way too many arrows.
A yellow arrow.
Wait, they're the ones firing the arrows at Diana in her book. I don't know. I don't know. My thinking right now is some of these titles are going to focus more on the individual character. Although Aquaman, I think we're going to see a focus on the Aqua family. I'm pretty sure that Aqualad, the new one, is going to stick. Like, he's going to be a part of this. Mira's going to be a part of this. I'm going to be curious to see how much of Brightest Day will play into this, or if that is something that will not have happened to this character. I don't know. So I'm curious to see how that's all going to work out as we go forward. Because looking at the cover and the image of that, it looks a lot like the Brightest Day Aquaman, going back to that book. So I don't know. I'm perfectly fine with whatever direction they go. Here's a book, Jim, that has me asking questions as far as how much is still in continuity. I'm looking over at Justice League International, and everything about this cover tells me that a lot of our continuity that we're used to is intact. We've got the Great 10 member there.
Yeah, August, General, and Irons.
Right. We've got Vixen. We've got Guy Gardner. That's Donna Troy, right?
Well, I thought that was my first reaction was Donna Troy.
Okay.
And then I started thinking, what if, could that be Black Canary?
Without the blonde hair?
Didn't she? She had dark hair.
Yeah, she dyed her hair that way. I don't know. That's a good point.
But my first reaction was that's Donna Troy.
Right. I don't know now, though. You make an interesting point there. So I'll be curious to see who that is. Fire and Ice, of course, and Rocket Red, which I'm assuming is the new guy. Yeah. I'm going to go on a limb and say I'm assuming it's a new guy because he was such a good character. Written by Dan Jurgens, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a booster book or not. and artist Aaron Lopresti. I don't know that one is mutually independent of the other, but we're taking the Booster writer and putting him on that book. So I don't know. I'm hoping. I like Booster in a solo, but I like that lineup. I'm curious to who that is because I'm going to go on a limb and say I'm assuming that's Donna Troy, but I'll say it tentatively.
Yeah, and if that's Donna Troy, could that be Dick Grayson in the back cowl? Because that was another one. I put the two side by side, and I was like, they look too similar for it to be, not to be Bruce. But what if this is Dick Grayson and the other's Bruce Wayne?
Yeah, I don't know. Then that could mean we're keeping the two Batmen. The jury's still out on that one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how far this is going to go. It's funny with the 11 titles they've released. I wanted to see Superman and Batman titles but why do you not release them right away? Because they probably reveal a lot.
Yeah.
Just the covers, knowing who they are. Here's a series that surprised me. Mr. Terrific.
I know. That completely, I was like, wait, that's Mr. Terrific? Oh my God, because that was a character I think we at one point in time said, man, I'd love to have the series. I don't think they'll ever do it, but it is a series I'd want to read. And sure enough, here we get it.
Yeah, and Eric Wallace, who's currently writing Titans, and Roger Robinson on art, and you can't argue with a cover by J.G. Jones, but that looks good.
Yeah, now, for me, when they said he's not only the third smartest man, but the most eligible bachelor, I took that as a little bit of a tweak to his history as well, because, again, I'm not 100% on Mr. Terrific history and origins, but he had the whole thing with his family dying and whatnot, correct?
Well, you're still a bachelor then, though, Jim.
But I don't know, it just seems like to me, when you're a widower, you're not saying you're the most eligible bachelor.
Well, it depends
you may be single, but you don't say you're a bachelor, is my mindset.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one where we'll wait and see. How much are they are they tweaking him? What are they doing with him? I'm curious. New costume. What do you think about that look?
Again, I'm cool with it. He's got the Fair Play tattoo on the arm. They've gotten rid of the jacket. This looks a little bit sleeker. It definitely is something I would imagine a super brain, super scientist kind of person would have and would be wearing, as opposed to a more regular superhero costume. So, again, I have no issues with the change.
Here's one I'm excited about that I never saw coming. Captain Atom.
Yeah.
Well, and the art by Freddie E. Williams II. J.T. Krull writing, and wow. Captain Atom has all the power in the world, but no hope of saving himself. Charged by nuclear energy, possessing vast molecular powers, he has the potential to be a god among men, a hero without limits. But the question is this, will he lose himself in the process? I like books like this where you take this super powerful character, and because that would be a real concern. You give somebody godlike powers, and how do you maintain your humanity? How do you stay connected with that? So there's a lot of options there to deal with his own human interactions, with his own interactions with the world, with him, being manipulated by that type of relationship with everything. So I'm cool with that. The cover by Stanley Lau looks really good. It's Freddie E. Williams II, which I love his work. It'll be an interesting book to see from him, because this really is something different than we've seen from him. So, and I like seeing an artist getting to stretch their creative legs and kind of developing a new kind of style, new look for it. I think this is going to be an interesting book.
Oh, definitely. Again, makes me wonder. When I saw this one and saw them talking about a god among men, the first thought that popped in my head is, with Superman. Superman's another one of those god among men kind of characters. So if they're throwing this with him, does this mean there's going to be some changes in the Superman universe? They would look to somebody else as the most powerful hero in the universe.
There's a difference, though, between he's charged by nuclear energy, possessing vast molecular powers. So I think we are going to see that he can do things and manipulate things in a way that Superman can't. There's a difference between being all-powerful like Superman and being able to do certain things like that, and being able to actually mess around with the molecular structure of things. So I'm going to be curious to see what his powers are like, Jim, because I don't think this has to negate anything for Superman. I don't want to see a Superman depowered. That to me is nonsense. Superman is Superman, and I don't think that, and I'll be 110% honest with you. My answer to that is, Jim, I don't think we're going to do that in a million years. I think we're going to see a definite definition of Superman being the Superman who we expect him to be today. So I don't think we're going to see that. I think what we're going to see is this character is a different style of all-powerful character, where his connection with his own... You're seeing a guy who was human become more than human. There's a difference than being born with powers, Jim, and gaining these godlike powers. How do you maintain who you are? Clark was raised from a child, having these powers, learning how to be himself from birth. This guy is in a completely different category. Gaining these powers, how do you maintain who you were before when all of a sudden you're dropped into this new status quo for yourself? And that's what I think the major distinction is going to be.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. We're in agreement. And Kat, this is a character. This is another title that, again, creative team has me completely locked into it. I'm definitely gonna, excited to see it, because he's a character that I do have knowledge of and I have some history with. But my history with him isn't so much that they could do whatever they want with the character, and I wouldn't have any real emotional or negative reaction to it. It'll be more about, okay, tell me a cool story, and I'm confident I'm going to get it with this team. So yeah, this is another one of those titles for me that I see it. It just adds to the excitement factor and takes away from the fear factor.
It's funny. All of these creative teams, now that we're starting to get creative teams put with books, are taking away from my fear factors. I'm less worried about things now that I'm finally seeing who's going to be doing what, and I'm finally getting one of my wishes, an anthology title. And I encourage people, please, if you've never tried an anthology title before, consider picking this one up. If you don't like it, it's not your cup of tea, please. You don't have to keep reading or anything like that. But if you're remotely interested in Dead Man at all, the anthology series is called DC Universe Presents. It's coming out. And the first story is, and it looks like it's going to be multi-issue story arcs, so we're going to see a complete arc with Deadman, Paul Jenkins, and Bernard Chang. And I love this kind of stuff, because it's going to be a chance for us to see how other characters fit into this world. And, it's a good chance for them to... A lot of characters were launched from books like this in the past. And I love seeing these type of titles, because you get to see sometimes creators work on characters that you never in a million years would expect them. Paul Jenkins is just a great writer, and I'm just looking forward to seeing where that book goes. And is there a character that you would like to see explored that you're like, this character isn't going to get solo screen time, or I've never seen this character in their own book before, I've only seen bits and pieces of them? Is there a character like that you'd love to see have an arc in a DC Universe Presents type of book, I guess is what I'm getting at, Jim?
Well, I don't want to lose the Question.
Yeah.
And Renee Montoya, when I say the Question, that's who I'm directly talking about. So I hope she's still going to be around. I think she's a good character that would be a good usage in kind of the anthology book, or just, maybe she couldn't hold her own series, which I personally would read, but I don't know if other people would. So I think she would be great to have in there. Mr. Terrific has his own series, so I'm happy there. So we don't have that. I'm wondering about John Stewart, if he's still going to have a ring. If he's not, we don't know what the Green Lantern universe looks like. Maybe John may have his own series, but if he doesn't, he's definitely a character I think would be awesome. To give him an arc, let somebody who has a good John Stewart story to tell, let them tell it. I think actually with changing people around and just modernizing, I think Red Tornado is one they could do something with. Because he's a character that they had a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit there, and every time I read him, I was like, this is a kind of a neat concept of the machine that has a soul, and he's not alive, but he is actually alive, and there's something to him beyond just this, tornado powers. I think he would be a great one. Give him a couple issue story arc, let him, flesh out who he is a little bit.
Yeah, there's a number of characters that I like in the universe that I would love to see have arcs. And even on team books, you take a look at books like Justice League International and stuff like that are, there's characters in there that aren't going to have their own solo titles that I'd love to see have. Donna Troy is a great example of a character who I love a good Donna Troy arc. And if she's not going to have her own solo series, it'd be fun to see what she's going to do. I'm very curious to Teen Titans, for example, because there's going to be a Teen Titans book. What's that lineup going to be? Is it going to be characters that we're currently used to seeing on Titans? I see certain images, Jim, that make me think that a lot more of the continuity is going to be in place than we think. There's just going to be some re-explanation of it. And then I see other ones that make me think, oh boy, there's going to be, incredibly huge changes. And I don't know that I have a preference for one or the other, as more as I'm curious to see who's going to be writing what books and what their actual stories are going to be. So I don't know if I have a preference there.
Yeah, I think when we see Teen Titans book, that will be a big answer to a lot of the questions we have about the second and third generation heroes. And I think especially once they start talking about the Green Lantern titles, that'll flesh some stuff out with the Green Lantern universe. And, of course, the Batman titles. We still have some really big questions that I have going on in my head, but I'm going to right now say I am more excited than terrified. Whereas when it first announced, I was split down the middle, even go. I think now I'm more excited than terrified right now.
Yeah, and I think finally seeing creative teams attached to these books, because for me it's always I'm of two minds. I'm following characters, but I'm also following creative teams. So there's certain characters that I'm worried about as far as am I going to be able to still read those characters. But then there were creators that I'm like, well, am I going to be able to get books from these creators? And now that I'm seeing more of these names popping up, favorite artists popping up, people that I was interested in seeing, people who I want to see more work from being attached to books, there's a number of names. We've only got 11 books so far. There's a number of names that I want to see attached to books yet. You know what I mean? Jim, something we didn't talk about is relationships for these characters. What is your wiggle room on relationships being messed with? Like, okay, let's go to the first one. And what's the first one that we really have to probably touch?
Lois and Clark.
Yeah. How comfortable would you be on them not being married?
That's a toughie. Because, initially I was about to say, well, if they're in a relationship or if there's something going on where the possible future, I'd be okay with it. But then as I'm trying to say those words, part of that nagging in the back of my head is like, don't touch them. Mm-hmm. I want my Lois and Clark together. I want them married. But again, Raphael, she's such a vital part of his life that she has to be in his life. If they do demarry them, there's got to be that Lois and Clark team up. There's got to be those two together, whether they're just co-workers and friends or whether they're just now dating or they just started dating. Or I think I'd be okay with them in just the beginning parts of a relationship if they wanted to de-age stuff. But for me, I really do want to see them together.
Raphael mentioned on the forum, and I believe it was him, and I apologize if I'm misquoting, he was referencing One More Day over at Marvel and the fact that they split up Peter and Mary Jane. And he was talking about how we've gotten some really great Spider-Man stories after that. And I agree with that, actually. I'm a Spidey fan. I like Spidey. So I agree with his point that there's some really great Spider-Man stories, but I don't think the great Spider-Man stories were because he split up from Mary Jane. I think it provided some relationship opportunities and stuff like that, but I think clever creators could have made just as interesting Spider-Man stories with them together. So I'm not disputing anything he's saying because his points, they're good Spider-Man stories. So I got to agree with him. I mean, there's no arguing with that. But I just think it was the direction that they wanted to go in, and I think that enthusiasm and excitement led to that. I don't know that splitting up Lois and Clark necessarily means better Superman stories. I don't think it necessarily means bad Superman stories. Yeah. I think what's ultimately going to drive good or bad Superman stories is going to be the excitement and the energy and creativity of the creators that are writing this character. And I've been really enjoying Superman. It's a book, though, that I don't think has the sales numbers that DC wants him to have. So I'm going to be very curious to see what they're going to do with him post all of this to try and generate some excitement about Superman again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're seeing here is we're seeing a lot of DC recognizing, okay, we got certain families that are doing very well, but are other ones that should be producing that kind of excitement energy creatively the creative teams have been great on the books. You and I have been doing this podcast for how many? 5 years, over 5 years, loving the books, and that's genuine. But the bottom line is sales numbers on a lot of the books that you and I are really digging are not delivering, what they should be. Mm-hmm. And for the creativity that's going into those books and the quality in my eyes. So I'm glad to see them taking an initiative to say, let's try thinking outside the box. Let's try some new things to try and make sure we're pleasing our fans who have been longtime readers of these characters, giving them books that will make them go wow and be excited and be interested in reading, as many of the 52 titles that they can grab. You can't grab everything, great. You can pick and choose from these titles and grab the ones that you like. But let's try to give some great titles that do that. Other relationships we should probably talk about. We got Lois and Clark, Barry and Iris. They got to be at least dating in my eyes. That's one. Ooh, you don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, and that's one I could deal with. Them just dating or them just meeting each other or the very beginning of it again, because I don't have that strong connection or that emotional connection between, Barry and Iris that you have. So that's a clear relationship that I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you can have that at the beginning stage. I think that'd be kind of cool to see that grow and develop, and I would enjoy that.
It is funny how, depending on what image I look at, though, I'm thinking different things about this universe. Justice League International really has me convinced of different things than, like, some of the other titles do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, and that could be misleading, where in the sense that these are these characters because they've been established this way, but maybe they have an earlier status quo as well. I don't know.
Now, the thing that when I think relationships, for me, it goes Lois and Clark, mm-hmm. and then Ma and Pa Kent. Those are always I want to see Pa Kent back. Granted, that was a great story when he died, and that was a beautiful story. I loved it, and I loved how it affected Clark and everything that happened there. But I do enjoy reading, Clark and Pa Kent reactions, interactions, and him dealing with them, and I still want to see Pa Kent alive.
Yeah, I'd like to see him back too. So I'm hoping we do get stuff like that. I don't know. It all depends. A lot depends on how this is all going to play out, as far as how much of the continuity is sticking after this. So I'm very curious to see how this all wraps up. I am glad to see, once again, that we're going to see the storylines wrapped up in August. Mm-hmm. Wrap-up's really important to me. Let us end these things. I know Wonder Woman's getting close to the end of her arc. I want to see the ending of these stories. For me as a reader that's been ongoing, give me the satisfaction of seeing those storylines finished and then move to this. And I like that this has been planned this way. So mm-hmm. that's something that I'm really excited about. Now, we got to talk about the big news of day and date digital for all of these titles. Not only that, it looks like, and I don't know if this is going to be an ongoing thing, Justice League is going to have a copy to read and collect, but also a polybagged version for $4.99 that has the code for a digital download. So for an extra $1, you can get a digital copy along with your main copy. I like that initiative.
Yeah, and to be honest with me, I think I'd probably, if they start doing day of delivery, I could maybe see myself going to digital. I've always been a bit of, between the two of us, I've been the more holdout and not really actively pursuing that. But I think, I don't know, I'm starting to look at some of the digital stuff going on. I'm like, you know what? I think this would be kind of neat. For maybe some of my titles go digital, some of my titles go with the traditional, and some do both.
Well, see, and that's, digital to me is, we're not the targets for digital, and we shouldn't be. I like that they're giving options for retail support with digital, where you can say, hey, for your fans that want digital, we're going to give you a retail option where you can get some of these books at the retailer with digital. And I know that the app offers options for comic shops with websites to then sell some of the digital on their website as well to make some profit there as well. So I think that's great. I think, it's really important that digital embraces the retailers and makes fans aware of, that are digital fans, aware of retailers, because those are the type of fans that'll walk into a comic shop and buy a trade. Those are the type of fans that'll walk into a comic shop and, pick up certain things. I'm a new digital fan. I've been reading for a year, let's say, digitally. I'm really into comics now, and I want to start exploring comic shops. And that's going to be good for retailers. I think the digital target should be a new audience. It really shouldn't be us. I like options for us, like those, digital pack-ins. I think this is a cool idea. I also like this whole idea of the print and digital editions having the first 4 weeks of release the same price point. Then the digital drops down to the $199 price point.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, it's a great way to say, hey, we're going to, for the first month of release, we're pairing up with digitally and print, so we're not going to be hurting our retailers that way. But for your people that didn't buy that book at retail after the first month, they can get a digital copy and, pick up a book that maybe they don't normally get in their pull list at the retailer. I think that's a great way to support the retailer. So I do think that are digital going to hurt some retailers? Yes. Are digital going to help retailers too? Yes, as long as new fans are targeted. So I think you could have something where it could wind up being better for retailers if handled correctly. And that's the key there.
Yeah.
It's really got to be, digital's got to be about introducing fans of the comics. I like the day and date releases because your goal there is we're targeting a new fan. So they've done this initiative where they've said, we're making this accessible to new fans. Now I want to see the advertising push to new fans. Let's get to fans in a brand new way. Green Lantern movie. It'd be great to see a lot of your media tie-ins with this making reference to the fact that DC in September, whole new relaunch, you want to be a part of it. This Flashpoint event's something that's going to lead to this very cool, new accessible universe where we as fans start seeing more of our titles that we're enjoying, Jim, sticking around. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that. And seeing retailers maybe have new traffic come into their place. That's always a good thing. If we keep targeting this same audience, that's not good for retailers. So it's... Can that digital hurt the retailer a little bit? Yes, but if it is targeted in such a way where it pushes new people into retail stores too, I think that can be a very, very good thing. And I'm hoping that it comes to that because I don't want to see comic book retailers hurt. I love comic shops. I've been a big advocate on this show of digital, but one of the big consistency points whenever I've brought it up has been it's about new readers. It's about a new type of audience. You're going to have you and me. I pick up books on the digital end and through these apps that are titles that I don't normally pick up. And that's supporting those comics in a different way. It's giving me a brand new... So like when I'm done reading all my books, I'm like, I'd like to try something new. I'll check out these apps. Dark Horse has one now. Boom has one. DC has one. Marvel has one. I'm glad to see some exploration on this and a chance for maybe some of these books to get, more profitability than they've been getting before. And I like the initiatives of now allowing retailers to be a part of the digital initiative instead of it being something that is separate from them. Give them a chance to be a part of those sales numbers and to make a profit from digital. And I think you're going to see, a nice little energy between both markets. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Well, even you said, which you're not anti-digital, but you've been very resistant to digital. That would be something that would bring you in on it with them being released regularly like that. So I don't know. It's a cool time. It's a scary time. It's an exciting time. It's all these kind of things put together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, man. I'm right now. I'm locking in, getting ready to rock and roll with the punches and the swerve. See what happens. This is something I've wanted. This is a big, epic change, and I'm really glad this is happening.
How does this fit with your? You used to always talk about progression. How you wanted to see characters age. And see them progress with multiple generations and things like that. How does this fit for you with that? Because that was something on the show you many times have mentioned that you wanted.
This is, in a way, this is the age, this is the progression. It's just kind of a reversing of it. This is the youthing of them. So now I have an explanation why this is, Batman is still Bruce Wayne. He's still active because they're doing the whole reboot. They're rechanging stuff around. I didn't want the same character that was running around in 1940 running around now. That was the thing that always, when I kept saying aging, that's what I was talking about. I wanted, if you look at, technically how old Bruce would be, even with tweaking and changing they've done. He was in his 40s, maybe almost 50. That kind of person would be having a hard time doing what Bruce does. Now, if we have a 30-some-year-old Batman, okay, I can see him, doing this stuff.
And that's something that actually you and I totally agree on. I've always liked, like Man of Steel. Why did I like that book? Because it revamped him and made him relevant in that time frame in the 80s. And I think that that's something that we've seen creators do in their storytelling with these characters. And I think this is just a new version of doing that, but a clarification, I think, to new readers that, hey, this is what we're doing here, and this is a great point to jump on board. I think it's exciting. I do hope that excitement continues. I'm seeing 11 titles right now that have me interested.
Yeah.
There's 52 books we need to talk about, so let's see.
And the thing that, on the other side makes me wonder what's going to happen to the JSA. Because this is something you and I had a little talk about, off air, where for me, I'm wondering if they're going to make them no longer the World War II superheroes. Yes, they'll be the older generation, but maybe they're not going to make them from World War II. And that's my big question. I'm wondering if they're going to do that with them, or if they're going to keep them World War II, because they've explained how they're still active, even though they would be in their 90s. If they actually were from World War II veterans, they kind of explained why they're still around, why they're still able to, active, and they're able to be heroes. But I don't know. For me, that's another big question. What are they going to do with them?
And are they going to have a book? See, to me, that's a title you need to have a JSA. And it needs to be... I like the World War II aspect of the JSA. Like, it's funny, that's one of the lines for me that I guess I could wrap my head around them being like the older generation and they handle it differently. Maybe they were from a different era. But to me, their whole tie to World War II and that they were these characters that were commentating on present day, being from that era, was interesting to me. And I liked the combination of those older heroes being with the new generation of fans, because it wasn't just that. Like, what's really working in these last two runs, both All-Stars and now in Guggenheim's book, what's working with them is you have this old guard working with this new generation of heroes. So I don't know. I'm going to be curious to see what is going to happen with that book. Is this Monument Point thing going to wrap up, and then we're going to see a new direction for JSA? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a big question. The other thing I was really wondering, Action Comics. Will we see another Action Comics #1?
Yes, that's already been. All the titles are #1, Jim. All 52 books are #1 issues.
Well, I'm wondering, are they going to continue on with Action Comics? That's what I'm saying. Is the Superman title going to be called Action Comics?
Yes. Well, there's probably going to be 2 Superman books, Jim. There's 52 books are going to be a lot. I know that they did announce in one of the articles there will be a new Action Comics #1.
Oh, okay.
They would honestly be stupid. They would be stupid not to use. There's no way. I'll tell you right now. Out of those 52 #1 titles, there will be a Detective Comics #1 and an Action Comics #1. Because it's a brand recognition. You would be insane to drop that. I'm just telling you, they would have to be completely off their rocker. Because it's universally an iconic. It's so DC. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things we can count on. I don't know how many Batman or Superman books there are going to be. That, I think, is a question mark. As far as what's that's going to look like. But I'm guessing we're going to have 2 Superman books, and I don't know what the Bat Family's going to look like at all.
Yeah.
That's a big
question. The Bat Family is completely up in the air. No idea yet.
So I'm very curious to see what teams are assigned with that.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Hey guys, this is Mike, a.k.a. Nathan's dad. And the rumors were true. DC relaunching all of their titles at #1 starting in September. Pretty unbelievable, pretty amazing. So I had heard it as a rumor a while ago, but I don't think I really believed they were going to go through with it. I know back in 1986 when the original Crisis on Infinite Earths ran, this was the original plan. And they did Superman and they did Wonder Woman, and then they kind of backed off, and then later did Hawkman, and didn't really go through with it. But it looks like this time they are. So, everybody's got a lot of questions about where this leaves the characters and what DC's continuity is going to look like. And I guess my biggest concerns with it are, where does it leave the older characters and the really young characters, like the third generation characters like Tim Drake and Connor Kent? If the A-list characters are all younger and we're going to see them at an earlier point in their careers and some of this history is being rewritten, will these characters even exist? I think it's fairly safe to say that somebody like Damian Wayne that counts on Bruce Wayne being around for a long, long time, that he'll probably, be erased at this point, that's a downer, but, I guess they felt like this is something that they really had to do to generate excitement and to relaunch this whole line, and so far I'm more excited about it than I am dreading it, so I guess that's a good thing. And then, the other generation of heroes that I'm wondering about is the original, the JSA guys. Where does this leave them? Are they going to be a regular staple of the regular DC universe, or are they going to be put back in the past, or where does it leave them? Where does it leave everybody? And, I guess I've got some hopes, too. 52 new titles, all starting at number 1, so I'm wondering what you guys are looking forward to and hoping some of those titles might be beyond, Green Lantern and Superman and the ones we know we can count on. And JSA is one of them for me, even though I've been liking the direction the last few months. I'd be interested to see a JSA book set back in World War II, which would obviously clean up the continuity a little bit if they're not walking around in 2011 regularly. And part of me wouldn't mind if they went back to Earth 2 in general and they restored that old piece of continuity. It always kind of bugged me when they entered the mainstream DC universe that it made it so that Superman was no longer the original DC superhero. And I wouldn't mind it if in the new continuity Superman was the first hero again. And all of that basically depends on the idea that this is a revamp that recreates a DC universe. But part of me is wondering if that's not what we're going to see here. There's a few things in the last few months that would seem to contradict this. I know Judd Winnick has been talking a lot about the new JLI series that's supposed to come out of Generation Lost. And an existing JLI would seem to contradict a young, new Justice League. And then I know James Robinson's been talking about his long-term plans for Justice League of America, which, if you've got a Justice League with, the core group and they're all a little bit younger, then how do you have an adult Batman, Dick Grayson, leading another team? It doesn't seem like that works in the same universe. So that leaves me wondering. It can't be a coincidence that there's 52 number 1 titles coming out in September. And I'm wondering if, and I'm pulling this out of nowhere, I haven't read anything about this, I'm just wondering, if 52 titles means that every single one of these number 1s takes place on a different Earth. Like, is the Batman we see in Detective and the Batman we're going to see in Batman and the Batman we're going to see in Justice League, is that the same guy? Or are we going to be looking at a whole lot of different looks of the DC universe? I know some of the rumored other titles are, a new Deadman book and a new OMAC book, and it seems like they're trying to spread things around a little bit and not just have 5 Green Lantern titles and 8 Batman titles, that it's going to be a more evenly spread look at the DC universe. So maybe it's not the DC universe, maybe it's 52 universes. But anyway, just a thought. Talk to you guys later, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about all this. Bye.
I don't think... First of all, I love the idea that there would be some of the books exploring the multiverse. I think, though, that the idea is to establish this universe and really establish it well and flesh out the characters that are in this universe versus confusing a new reader with saying all of these books take place in different places. Like Wonder Woman that's in Justice League of America, I'm totally convinced that's the Wonder Woman that's in the Brian Azzarello book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're going to be focusing on this is the change to our universe, not this isn't an alternate universe. They wanted to change the actual DC, proper what is, they're making a change here, not doing it, other universes. Now, as soon as he says other, exploring other verses, I'm in agreement with you and him. I think it'd be cool to see other universes come out of this, but I don't think they're going to do that.
With 52 titles, it'd be kind of cool. They have that anthology title that's coming up. I would love to see I know Grant Morrison's doing that Multiversity miniseries that's going to be coming out. Mm-hmm. That's cool. I would love to see a regular ongoing book that does that.
Yes.
Where
definitely.
Anthology, Elseworlds, 6 issues, just kind of exploring all these other worlds and just different characters that are in there. It'd be great to see that. He mentioned, what are some titles we want to see out of this? Jonah Hex. I want that book. Same creative team. Don't change. Secret Six. Robin. There's got to be a Robin book. Or Red Robin. Or
I want a Tim Drake book.
Yeah. He would be somebody. Is there a change that would get me up in arms? No Tim Drake.
I'd be upset. Even if they went and said the reason we don't have Tim Drake is because Dick Grayson is still Robin, I would be angry. I'm like, no, make him Nightwing and just I would be okay with them getting rid of the whole Jason Todd story if it saved Tim.
I'm not entirely convinced that we're going to be losing a lot of these stories, these backstories with some of the characters. I don't know. I'm going to be curious to see how much they mess with the Bat universe.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that in order to do this, you have to mess with the whole... See, a lot of this Flashpoint and how it ends is going to drive a lot of what's really happening. Because Flashpoint's going to explain why there's this change to the universe, and then, bam, we're going to be dropped into this new universe. So, I don't know. I'm curious and excited, and the Bat books have me... honestly, the Bat books have me the most worried. Because I could see there being a Secret Six book in a revamped universe. Mm-hmm. Relatively easily, where you could do that. Some other titles I'd like to see. Power Girl. I've really grown to like that book, and I'd love to see a continued ongoing Power Girl book.
Zatanna, another one. It's another one where it's the series just had, issue 13, so that it doesn't have a lengthy run, so they may say, well, let's either... That could be something that people could look at and say, well, we can get rid of that, or we can, do something else with it. But I don't want to lose that. I like that backstory they've started building, where they've started building her team, the people around her, and with that relationship that budding relationship she's got with that detective, and the stuff going on with her between her and Brother Knight. There's a pretty cool continuity that I'm starting to like. That I don't want to lose that.
Connor and Cassie. But two characters that I'm worried about. Cassie more than Connor.
Yeah.
As far as how it's going to play out. Although, seeing Donna Troy if that is Donna Troy on Justice League International, has me a little more convinced that we're going to see Cassie and Connor on Teen Titans.
Yeah. If that is Donna Troy, then that's telling me that the original Teen Titans are now adults. So we have the generation after that coming in. So that would mean Tim Drake. That would mean, Connor, Cassie, Bart, or, Bart. So maybe we are going to get to keep the second generation like Wally and Dick Grayson. They just won't be, as old as they are now. They'll just be starting off.
You could make them technically about as old as they are now and make... the older brother relationship between like Dick Grayson and Bruce, for example.
Yeah.
Where you could do that and make that work that way. So I don't know. Those are the questions that I'm excited about and worried about and all that at the same time because they're unknowns. Yet, I don't want it all spelled out right now. I want to read, some of this stuff I want to find out beforehand just so I know what titles, I'm most excited to read first. But some of it I just want to read in the pages. Okay, I'll find out, in these books as they're coming through. And until you read it, you don't know if you like it or not. Because you can't, until you see what the writers are doing and what the direction is for the universe, until you've actually read some of these titles, you don't know if you're going to like something or not. So I'm tentative, like everybody else. Do I know? I mean, I'm mentioning a whole bunch of excitement on this, and I am. But until we've actually read the book, I don't know if I'm right to be excited. but that's part of being a part of this art form. That's part of a new season of comics. It's what's going to go. These new creative teams are trying these things. They're going to throw ideas out. There's a lot of names there that I know deliver creatively. So that has me excited. That does increase excitement. It does. It's funny how attached creative teams do build confidence very fast. So I don't know. I'm very curious on some of those.
Hey Sean and Jim, this is Jimmy Guns, JD74. Wanted to talk about the DC news about the whole renumbering. Not sure what you guys think about it. I'm optimistically cautious about it. I think it could lead to a whole lot of new options and really cool things for the DC universe. I think a lot of people's fears are that it's going to change their characters too much and maybe even, make some characters obsolete in this new renumbering phase. I'm on the opinion that I think this is a good thing. Maybe we'll bring in new readers, maybe younger readers, and you never know. I always felt that with DC's history and longevity, times after a while you get a bit of the reboot. So I think that this would be an interesting move on their part, and I'm down for it. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen and what will come next, and what we'll see. I think it'll be an interesting time to be a DC fan, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are doing well, and look forward to next episode. Bye, guys.
Yeah, like cautiously optimistic. I like that one.
Yeah.
Because I'm optimistic about it too. Especially because of the creatively, I've been really enjoying their books. So, as long as they've been delivering that for me, there's an excitement there. But you can't, I'll go back to what Daryl Taylor said. You can't argue with the sales numbers right now. And there's books that I think have been creative successes that haven't been Manhunter. Let's go back to Manhunter. There's a book, in my mind, never should have been canceled. And, I understand why DC did, sales-wise, but creatively, with the quality of that title, it should have had a bigger audience.
Amen.
And, I think that there's an opportunity to launch some unique characters, which Mike was mentioning before. Some of these characters that are the wider part of the universe that don't normally seem to be able to carry their own titles. But if you launch them in this fashion with this kind of an initiative, there's some opportunity then to maybe reach some new readers. Blue Beetle. Wait, you know what book I'd like to see? I would love to read Blue Beetle again monthly.
Yeah.
And there's a character who I would love to see out of this, maybe them give another chance and say, hey, we're going to do this. This is an interesting character. He was just on Smallville on television. He's been on the Brave and the Bold cartoon. There's some more awareness of the character. Maybe this is a time to try to launch out that character again. So I don't know. There's a number of DC characters that I would love to see launched again. Manhunter. I don't think we're going to see it, but that's one I would love to see again. I'm curious to see what other team books we're going to get.
Yeah, that's the big thing. What's going to happen on the team side and Legion of Superheroes? Something we haven't mentioned, but that's a book I'm wondering. I want to have that. And again, I'm wondering which Legion of the Superheroes are we going to get?
That's a book that I technically don't want to see quote-unquote rebooted. I would love to see Levitt stay, and I hope that sticks, because I think what he's doing right now is great. Legion's one of those things where they can kind of be folded into all this, where the changing continuity. It'd be great to see in their future the statues change. You know what I mean? Where it's, the new Superman statue and that type of thing. I like the idea that Legion kind of in these events, because historically that's what's happened. They've just kind of folded into all this. So I think what Levitz is doing there is just plain terrific. So I want to see that book stick. Yeah, one book I'd love to see launched again, which isn't going to happen, I'm sure, is Rebels. The ending issue of that was terrific, and is a series that I thought was a really cool try. But thematically, I want to see a Rebels. I want to see a Manhunter. I want to see those type of books. Could Captain Atom be that new Rebels, that new Manhunter, that new book where you're kind of like, wow, I'm really digging Captain Atom in a way. The creative team looks terrific on that. So that could be one of those books, that's that type of book. And hopefully with this type of initiative backing it, it's a book that could launch out and be creatively something that gains a new readership because of this type of initiative. So that's what I am hoping comes from this. And that's kind of like a lot of what Mike was saying earlier. And that goes with this, Jamie's idea about being, cautiously optimistic, that this could do that. To me, the key, once again, is there's got to be some advertising outside of the traditional comic fan. And there's, maybe digitally, if you're going to do it digitally some free issues to these things. Digitally, some, maybe the first few pages of these books. And I'm not talking about some of the 4-page previews, maybe the first half of the book. You know what I mean? Really get people into the meat and potatoes. Or maybe first full issues of some titles. Maybe not right away, but, 3 months down the road. Start saying, hey, first issue free, as the series starts getting underway to get people excited about these titles. Some kind of sampler that has some substantial nature to it, just to get people aware. I'm not saying, you don't want to obviously put out an issue that you're buying right now for free, but just do something more to make people who don't normally pick up the books aware of how cool the stories are.
Yeah, one of the things that I use as kind of a judge on advertising is how many people at my work will forward a news article or forward something they've read or saw that's about comic books. Because, the people I work with are not comic book readers, but they are, news people. They are out there reading, news online, reading the printed papers, and just they're out there, they're in the public eye looking around and just the general advertisement. So I always find it curious when one of them gets an article or sees something and says, hey, did you see this? I'm like, yeah, I saw that, thanks.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Jim. That type of thing and that type of awareness. Like, I'm glad to see these comics now. I'm glad to see their partnership with USA Today. I hope that continues. I don't know what built that relationship or how. That's brilliant. And I don't think it's just good for DC. I think that you talk about what's good for comic book retailers. That stuff is good for comic book retailers. That's where a company, there might be some comic retailers like, they're doing what? Day and date digital? Well, they're, kind of hurting us with this. But that USA Today partnership has got to be, I'm hoping, is helping some comic book retailers where it's getting some people to walk into a shop that haven't before. So that I hope that continues. And that we see some previews in USA Today of some of these books. Because I'd love to see some of that out there.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Let's get the word out about this stuff. And on the USA Today's site. And I don't know, I'm that's the type of thing I would really like to see out of this.
Hi, Sean and Jim. This is Charlie Huffman, ex-Onslaught on some forums and Twitter, co-host of The Alternate Reality. I was just listening to your Superman conversation where he renounces his citizenship, and I kind of wondered at what point, when did he become a citizen? What comic was it in? Because I kind of wonder if he can renounce something that he really doesn't have. I don't know. It's interesting. I agree with your conversations, but I tend to believe that this is a one-off book where they probably won't mention it again. But that's just my interpretation of things. How can he give something up that he never had in the first place? So maybe that's what he was saying. He's he's an alien. He doesn't have the citizenship. I mean, did he get it when he married Lois? Maybe. Just thinking. But thanks for the great podcast, guys. Bye.
When the Kents adopted him. That would have been when he got it. I mean, are we talking about Superman or Clark Kent? Because he talks about when he married Lois. Well, that would be when Clark Kent married Lois. So going on that same logic, it would be when the Kents adopted him, when Clark Kent got it. But see, that's the funny part. I took it in that issue that it was Superman renouncing his citizenship, not Clark Kent.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was a one-shot. It was just a nice story. It was a story being told in in Action Comics. It wasn't going to be continuity, and especially since they're changing stuff around. Now, maybe when they change stuff around, Superman will have established himself as a hero of the world and not as, more of a representation of the United States. But he is part of the Justice League of America. So I don't know. It's gonna be. I'm curious to see if that continues on with the rebooting.
Well, I would say definitely not with the rebooting. Because to me, if you're going to do this whole number one thing, and you keep referring back to... I'm not saying you can't refer back to continuity, you can't refer back to these characters having a history. Don't get me wrong, I'm a continuity junkie, so I like that kind of stuff. And I'm hoping we do see some ties that these characters have a history. And I am taking everything that they're saying to do that. But I think what we're going to see with these number ones is a lot of the characters moving forward today, in current time, having a history, but a lot of focus on what is their relevance today, here and now. And I don't think we're going to see like a reference there to this one-off story. I'm actually 100% agreeing with him and other people who said similar. Because remember, a lot of our comments were before we knew that they were doing this. So this does change a lot. Because we do see that's clearly a younger Superman who wouldn't have done that. Whereas this Superman, because I don't know, I guess I'm taking it that New Krypton won't have happened to this Superman. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a... I don't know. It's a really good comment. We're kind of just saying, okay, this is going to happen, or this is, and...
If it is our Superman, but just that they're implying that he is younger or something like that, we got a younger vibe to him, then yeah, I want to see a reference to that. But I don't think that's the point of this. I think the point of this is to really kind of, in a good way, simplify things for a newer reader, while at the same time sticking to the heavy core of what we as hardcore fans expect of these characters, and giving us the kind of stories that we demand and we're looking for. I think that's the point of this. Is to make it accessible to newer people and exciting and vibrant and feeling like the world that we're comfortable with, yet teaching us new things about it for the longtime fans. And the Man of Steel is, I think, a great, to me, concept of what we're kind of looking at here. We're looking at a modern day, across the line, doing something like that, without necessarily having to do an origin for everybody. And with the idea that some of these people have been operating for, some time, and they know each other. Because the Justice League, the blurb for that is that we're going to see why this team was brought together. And I was taking that to mean for the first time. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, this could be the beginning of it.
So I don't know. I'm curious. Which then means, going back to the JLI, does that mean that the JLI is going to be brought together for the first time? I don't know. and those are a lot of unanswered questions. How much is there going to be some of the current continuity that sticks, some that doesn't? I don't know. Flashpoint's going to answer a lot of this. And I don't know that it necessarily each character is going to be following the same rules with that. There might be some characters that retain key components of their continuity, other characters that don't. And Flashpoint's going to probably explain a lot of that. That's what I'm most interested and intrigued about right now, because I don't think that we have all those answers. It's interesting. But his citizenship thing, I don't know. Superman, I don't remember Superman ever formally being given citizenship. I think people have always, because he's been assuming that his secret identity is an American citizen, I guess he makes a point. He's an alien, so... but I guess they were always assuming that he somehow has adopted this as his home country, and that's how he became a citizen. Because you don't have to be born here to be a citizen of the United States.
Yeah, but you do have to either go through the actual process, and maybe there was an issue where he went through the process and became an actual citizen. I don't know.
Well, when you're adopted, if you're adopted to American parents, like the Kents, who are American citizens, wouldn't he have, in that process of adoption... To answer the question, I don't remember ever reading a story where that went through. But you got to think, if they went through the whole adoption process, he actually has a Social Security number. He actually has legal standing. And there's been stories that have explained that they known somebody, or, that this person was a lawyer, they were able to kind of fudge that stuff together. So, I don't know. I'd be curious to see how he's being handled. Is Secret Origin, what Jeff Johns did recently, going to be the origin for this Superman? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as far going back onto that story, I always took it as when he was a boy, he was adopted. So his parents would have, that would have made him a citizen.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. But here's the interesting thing with that. The way the laws are now with, adoption and just the whole identification process, it was a lot easier to get away with a quasi-legal adoption back in the day than it would be nowadays.
Well, and that's the thing. So, I guess I always took it as if that was able to be done back then he would be a citizen by that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are two distinctions there. But I would guess if I was a guy and I was looking at Superman, I'm assuming that he's not Superman 24/7, that he's somebody else part of the time, and that somebody else is the citizen, not Superman.
Right.
Because he's a vigilante. I mean, that's the whole nature of vigilantes.
Yeah, it's the whole, yeah.
So that's how I take it.
Hey guys, it's Bobby C., also known as Starwolf Oakley on the forums. I was interested to hear you talk about Tim Drake at length last episode, and in the way you discussed Tim Drake, it should be noted that in earlier issue of Teen Titans, Tim had to write an essay for school with the old "What I Want to Be When I Grow Up," and all he could think of to say was "not Batman." That was it's the only thing he could really think of. Now, the thing to note is the question for Tim, he doesn't want to be Batman or he doesn't want to be Bruce Wayne. Now, the thing about Bruce Wayne is, and I think this goes for the character for years, is that Bruce knows how screwed up he is. He knows he's screwed up beyond a normal person. He's also screwed up in a different way than a regular superhero is, even a superhero without superhuman powers. I mean, Batman Incorporated is Bruce gathering other crime fighters who, even though they are very athletic and have fancy gadgets, don't have superhuman powers, but still wear masks and fight crime, but just aren't as screwed up as he is. And even with Batman Incorporated and Dick is Robin, and if Tim or Damian ever becomes Dick is Batman, and Tim or Damian ever become Batman, he doesn't want them to be like him, because, Bruce knows someone can be Batman. Dick can be Batman. In a few years, Tim can be Batman. Like in 20 years, Damian would Batman. But that doesn't mean they have to be like him. I mean, Bruce has the awareness of how screwed up he is. Going back to Tim Drake, it should be noted that Tim Drake went under a lot of suffering and adversity because he lost, along with his father, he lost Stephanie Brown, Connor Kent, and Bart Allen in very quick succession. And even though those characters are back now, I don't know if they were ever intended to come back. I think Chuck Dixon and Jeff Johns were able to talk Dan DiDio into it. And sometimes it did seem like everything was designed to make Tim Drake more and more miserable, which could make him more relatable as a character, but it's kind of hard to say. Finally, when you talk about Tim Drake, you have to talk about Jason Todd and how there's always the thing that Jason was the bad Robin who got himself killed because he didn't listen to Bruce, when it can be said often Dick didn't listen to Bruce, Tim sometimes didn't listen to Bruce, but Bruce now can't work with Damian because Damian won't follow orders properly. It's kind of like, well, isn't Robin at least sometimes not listening to Bruce the whole point? Finally, with Jason Todd in Batman and Robin 23, one, if you were looking at it, you'd think it was Roy Harper, which doesn't make much sense. But it doesn't make sense that Jason would almost be insulted to stay in Arkham Asylum. He says, if you want to lock me up, but I'm not crazy, at least not compared to you. Finally, I don't know if you guys have heard some of the mild controversy over the Flashpoint map, over the map saying for Africa, it says ape-controlled. Some people are saying, like, well, I know it's saying it wasn't intentionally racist, but it sort of comes like that if you consider being politically correct. People are sort of saying on some boards and whatnot, it's like, geez, they really didn't know. That doesn't exactly look the most culturally sensitive, like it's still the 1990s and political correctness is blasting all over the place. It's still interesting to see how people react to that minor detail, and if people were wondering if they're blowing it out of proportion, or two, they're just shrugging their shoulders and thinking DC Comics can be kind of ignorant about this sort of thing when they want to be. In any case, keep up the great work, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
First of all right, I gotta say, the whole race thing, I understand that, and I understand why people would say that's insensitive, but Gorilla City is in Africa. Yeah. And I didn't, I'm going to be honest with you, I looked at the map, and I never once looked at that as being a race issue. First of all, if somebody takes offense to that, I can respect that, and if that's sensitive, I'm sensitive to that. I think in this day and age, though, I never once even had that cross my mind. I looked at it as Gorilla City was in Africa. There's jungles there, and that's where it was from. I never, in any way, shape, or form, even connected that. I think in this day and age, we've really got to, and I don't mean this to be insensitive at all, we got to move kind of past making connections like that. Because I don't even make that connotation as a connection. And I think it's silly that we in this day and age should be connecting that to any person. I mean, that's, when he heard that, and I'm not saying, Bobby, you're wrong, and I know that there's, first of all, I didn't see any uproar on it, but I'm not saying you're wrong on that. I don't always look for that kind of stuff, meaning, I usually read my comics. I tend to post to our listeners, so I don't usually get into all that. So thank you for pointing it out, because I think it's interesting. I do think it's very important nowadays to be sensitive to everybody. So let me clarify that. But I don't think in this case that it was meant as DC slapping in the face any group of people. I never took it that way. Gorilla City, it's in Africa. So what? I mean, that's one of those things. I could take it if they transplanted it there all of a sudden as people saying, well, geez, they're making some kind of statement. But I think it would be more insensitive to move Gorilla City for that reason, because that means you're thinking of it that way. I don't know, and Jim, you might think I'm completely off base here on this one. I think if you move that, that's like saying to somebody, wow, why did they move that? Are they thinking that we're going to think that it's that? That's where you get into a really tricky issue. Is it better to just leave it where it is and because it's Gorilla City, or is it better to move it and make an issue out of something that really shouldn't be an issue at all?
Yeah, I would just think, just leave it in Africa, because that's where Gorilla City has been, and always will be. That's going back to Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. Mm-hmm. He was in Africa. It's just, that's where they've traditionally had the intelligent apes, the talking apes, the whole character Grodd, and I can't think of what the good ape from Ape City's name is off the top of my head right now.
Solivar.
Yeah, thank you. Solivar is there, so that would just make sense to me to have him there.
I've never connected Gorilla City in any way, shape, or form as being a racial slam or anything like that. Honestly, if I did and I thought that it was meant that way, I would be in an uproar too. So, I mean, I'm really against that kind of stuff. So please don't think I'm insensitive to that and I don't care about that. I do. I think that there can be people who are racially, not just racially, when it comes to sexual preferences and things like that, people can be insensitive to that kind of stuff. I'm really anti that, but these are apes from a comic book that really I've never at any time connected them with being connected to any kind of human group as being a slam or them being a link to that. So no, I don't think they were being insensitive doing that. I think the reason why it spread out of Africa is because Gorilla City was there. Now, if Gorilla City was in Chicago and they moved it to Africa, I would say they did what? Why would they do that? Then you've got an issue. But Gorilla City in its origins was always in Africa. I mean, that's something in DC history, and even back then that was never meant to be linked to that in any way, shape, or form. If it was, I would agree. So I think where you get into tricky issues like that, I remember as a kid growing up watching Little Rascals. Now, as a kid, admittedly, I loved all the characters, and there's some racial connotations in there that until I was an adult and I recently resaw them, I never understood. I never got that. I watched the show. I loved all the characters. I laughed at the jokes. There were ones that I didn't understand, and it never made me racially look at any group differently, if I'm making any sense, Jim. But when I see them today, I can understand how, like, that would be, if I were to be watching that with certain friends of mine, that would be on my end, unless they said they really wanted to watch it and they knew what they were in for. That would be insensitive, because there were things in there that were definite racial slurs. And, that was a sign of the times back then. But something like Gorilla City was never linked to that. I never took that as, when I looked at that map, I never took that as, wow, they're really slamming a group of people. Gorilla City's always been there. That wasn't something new that they did for this. So that was really the location of that. Just like if Paradise Island had been set in Africa, that should have been Diana's territory. Or if Atlantis was under Africa, that would have been Aquaman's territory. I think that was really the indication there. This is a chance to take Grodd and really show Grodd as a leader. I never saw any connection to that. If somebody is, and it's something that bothers them, my heart goes out to you. I just don't see the connection. And if somebody thinks that, honestly, I will say this openly, I'm an open-minded guy. If I'm missing something here, please email me or call into the show and straighten me out. Because I don't see it, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So, and maybe I am, I'm just not, I'm being ignorant and I'm not seeing that. And I'm always willing to be educated. So, and this show certainly should be an open discussion forum for that. So feel free to call in and say, hey, guys, don't you get it? I just don't see that. This is a character that's been around, since the Silver Age, Grodd. And I've never made that connection with Grodd or Gorilla City. I grew up, listening to, I've got a Batman record with Batman versus Grodd, and I never connected that to anybody human. I connected it more to Planet of the Apes than anything like that. And even that's a loose connection in that case. I don't know. What about you? Did you make that connection at all?
No. As I said, it just, Africa is where, Gorilla City is. That's where, Grodd is, and that's where they've always been. So that's why, boom.
There are things in media that I will read and see nowadays, and not just race, like I said, sexual preference issues and things like that, where I'm like, wow, people are just really being unnecessarily mean or rude to groups of people. That in this day and age, I'm like, really? Are we kind of backwards now? But I never took that to be any type of slam or backwards comment. I would have mentioned that, honestly, because that kind of stuff would have been like, really, who missed this one? That would have been a big faux pas if they really did that. I just never took it that way. So, thanks for bringing it up, though. Honestly, some of his other comments that he talked about, got so caught up in that one, and I forgot about some of the other guys, like Tim Drake and Bruce Wayne, and that whole relationship there. I think Tim, it wasn't so much that Tim didn't want to be Bruce. Tim was afraid he was going to be Bruce. I think there's a connection between Tim and Bruce that's very different than the connection between Dick and Bruce. Dick Grayson has always been a little bit more fun-loving, the acrobatic nature to him and all that. I always took Dick Grayson to be a good detective, but he wasn't Batman's level. I think as he's grown older, he's connected more to that and to the training of his mentor, and we see that side of him. But he definitely approaches things in more of a, I don't want to say jovial manner, but he's more friendly. He's the friendly face. Where you see it now with Tim as Red Robin. Tim, when his public persona is not the same friendly persona of Dick Grayson. He doesn't smile the same way that Dick Grayson does, if that makes sense. So I think Tim was always afraid of becoming Bruce, getting too into the darkness. Those things that you mentioned that happened to Tim in his life, we saw them in his book, and I thought it was an interesting exploration, lead him down that path where Tim had to rebel against it. I loved the story arcs in Teen Titans where we got to see the future version of Tim as Batman, where he didn't pull himself back and he actually fell into a very dark path, and we got to see what happened to him because of it. And that's something that Tim had to rebel against and learn from seeing that future. Your future's not always set in stone. You can change it. And sometimes learning your future isn't such a bad thing. And I like that exploration of that arc. But I don't know if you agree with me at all on that, Jim.
Yeah, when with Tim not wanting to be Batman, I always took it that he didn't want to become the dark, brooding Batman, the untrusting Batman, who only was Batman, who didn't have a life. Tim wanted to have a real life. If you think back to that one issue of the date issue, where Tim and Zoe go out on their first date, and halfway through it, Bruce kind of Batman interferes in the with the combat, and Tim's like, hey, I was trying to have a real life here. It's stuff like that is why I think Tim doesn't want to be Batman, where he doesn't want his only life to be the mission. He wants to be Tim Drake. He doesn't just want to be Robin or Red Robin.
I totally agree.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Joining us right now is friend of the show, Zach Kruse. And Zach, I wanted to talk to you about the Summit City Comic-Con, because this is great. I'm loving that we're seeing more around the country of these straight comic book shows that are popping up now. And can you tell us a little bit about Summit City Comic-Con? Because last year was the first year for it. So what led to the genesis of Summit City? And tell us a little bit about the show.
Sure. Well, I guess the show is basically, first things first, was just born out of, a deep, passionate, hug and kiss love for comics. That was the first thing. And to make a long story short, basically it started, as most folks know who listen to the show, I'm sure they know that I'm the marketing director at Discount Comic Book Service. And 2 years ago, we had our 10th anniversary sale, and we had some things lined up for the store, and I went to Cam and I said, hey, listen, why don't you let me put together an event for the store? So I threw together an event for the store in like 3-4 weeks, and it was, a huge success for us. We had tons of people through the door, way more than we ever expected. And then after that, the day after, like in the middle of the day, I just drove over to Cam's house and I said, hey, look, man, we should do a show. I was like, you and I and Christina, Cameron's wife, will own it together. So I'll own half, you guys own half, and we'll build a show here in Fort Wayne. The city deserves it. So that's basically how we got started on everything, and it just sort of blossomed from there. Fortunately, Fort Wayne's a really great comics town. Surprisingly enough, it's less than 300,000 people that live in the city, but we've got 4 healthy comic shops, and we previously had like 5 or 6 within like the past 7 years or so. And we have just as many gaming stores, and we have a couple of collectible toy stores. So it's a relatively geeky city, and that's awesome for us for the show. And it's just terrific in general. So taking that into consideration and the success that we had for the anniversary sale, like I said, we just kind of got going last year for the 2010 show, and we had some really great guests last year, and we had attendance that, way more than exceeded my hopes and expectations. So everything went great last year, and this year should be just as well, should go just as well, if not better, I hope. Our guest list this year has been getting bigger and better, and last year we had over 80 creators at the show. This year we're up about 130. So that's huge for us. It's mostly a creator-driven show because that's where I'm at conventions. I love vendors, and I love back issue bin diving, and I love checking out original art dealers. But really, when I'm at a show, I'm spending all my time in Artist Alley. Because that's where the community is, and that's where the friendships sort of blossom, and that's where you get the stuff that really means something to you. You guys do tons of shows, so I'm sure you know, but you go back to Artist Alley and you hang out and you meet guys like, say, Mike Norton, who will be at the show, and you get a commission from Mike, and you hang out and you talk to him, you find out what a great guy he is, and that's something that you can take with you for the rest of your life, and it's something that's unique for you and special for you that you're not going to find in a back issue bin, So that's sort of the show I want to have.
It's also the memory The person that, the chance to, like, for me, a lot of times, I used to be real big on getting signed comics. I still enjoyed getting comics signed, but then I, broke into getting sketches and commissions like you're talking about as well. And the great thing is each of those are a memory to me. Because I remember as a kid growing up, you read comics, and I didn't know a lot about the whole, there weren't as many conventions as there are now. There wasn't that kind of access. So you'd hear about a convention, but it always seemed like this big, huge thing that, like, especially as a kid, how am I going to go to that?
Yeah.
So nowadays, the great thing is with a lot more community conventions popping up, a short road trip, and you are at a convention. You are at a gathering of an intense amount of creators and able to have that experience with people who really, that's one of the things I love about, I was looking at the Summit City lineup. You've got a great lineup of creators. In a day, you're going to really be able to do a ton of visiting and seeing a lot of diverse creators as well. Has the guest list grown since last year? Because I remember looking over last year's guest list, which was huge, and I'm looking over this one, I'm like, wow, you guys seem to even, I don't know if it's just me visually that I'm seeing it that way.
No, we've almost, we haven't quite doubled it. We're about 40% bigger than last year, creator-wise. Last year, if you exclude a couple last-minute cancellations we had last year, we were about 80. This year we're at 130, or just a shade under 130 right now. So the guest list has been going really well, and I was a little nervous about it because the way that we do the tables, I was worried that we were going to run out and I was going to have to turn people away, and that's the last thing I wanted to do. So, but fortunately, the Grand Wayne Center where we hold the convention has been really accommodating. So we've been able to allow even more people than I had hoped or expected to. But yeah, no, the guest list has been great this year, and I'm sure you saw then that one of our bigger guests for this year is Dennis Cowan.
The question.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love his question stuff. So. Dennis actually used to have a studio near Fort Wayne, in North Manchester, Indiana, about a half hour south of us. So it's sort of a homecoming type thing for him. It's like the first time he's been back to Fort Wayne in like 16 years. So that's really exciting. I'm really just pumped up to have him at the show.
It's funny. I'm teaching a class that week, and I'm looking for by hook or crook to find a way to just drive out, because the road trip, I live in Ohio, and the road trip there isn't a big road trip. I mean, I can easily do that and make that happen. So I'm looking, this is one, especially when first of all, your guest list was great without that. But that's like, now it's like icing on the cake. I'm like, what? They got who? And I loved the question. I've never had an opportunity to meet him. I'm like, oh, this is just like one more reason that I've got to find a way to get to this show. And you guys already you said 130 people. I'm like, for me, that's like, because for me, Artist Alley is about learning about new books. Also connecting with creators who have already been enjoying. There have been so many times just walking through Artist Alley, I've ended up picking something that I've never read before, and I wouldn't have read otherwise unless I talked to the creator and got to see their passion for it. Because a lot of times a creator will sell you on something and connect with you because you hear what they were into that led them to the creation of the property that they were working with. And that will a lot of times make you go, wow, we have a lot of similarities here. This is somebody that's coming from, like, my backyard. And, we were hanging out together as we were growing up, and this is the same type of product I'm into. And there's been so many books or web comics or whatever that I've gotten into just from walking down an Artist Alley and hearing somebody pitching it. Sometimes it's overhearing a conversation. Where I'm waiting in line for a signature with somebody else, and I'll overhear somebody chatting. And that's that community aspect you're talking about a lot of times. When you're hanging out at a convention, there's so many conversations going on around you that will pull you in and get you into something, especially with the amount of comic book product now, that maybe you would have missed otherwise.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's I feel the same way. I get sold on a lot of stuff where I discover a lot of new creators or, get sucked into plenty of different things that are just going to, cost me a lot of money, but bring me a lot of joy over the next, long period of time. So I'm the exact same way. And that's another reason I love those Artist Alley shows is it's an opportunity to discover something new and not be, I don't want to use a negative term, but and not be stuck in the back issue bins looking for the same 15 issues of Amazing Spider-Man that I look for at every show. You know what I mean? I would rather be out there and talking to people and hanging out and learning and finding something new, because those Spider-Man issues or those Batman issues or whatever, they're going to be there when I'm ready to read them or when I really want them. But these guys at the show pitching their stuff and trying to make their way, with the webcomic or a mini comic or something that they're self-publishing or whatever, they may not be there every show. So it's maybe not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but it's a rare opportunity that you have to actually meet those guys and hang out and spend time and find something new.
Zach,
It's moments like a people watching moment. A lot of times, my favorite vacation is Las Vegas, because I'm a gambling addict. But I also like just the wandering around at 2, 3 in the morning, on the Vegas Strip and just seeing what you see. Same kind of feeling I get a lot of times at these different cons where you're going through Artist Alley. And, I love to watch a creator do a sketch and just, because I have no artistic abilities. I love seeing them do that creation. I'm just like, oh, wow, they're just casually doing it. And you see them casually doing it as you're carrying on a conversation with somebody. And I'm just like, how can you do that amazing work and just have this casual conversation about, what's going on in Superman right now? And it just, stuff like those are the moments in cons for me that I love being at the con.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that blows my mind. Like, I know I mentioned Mike before, but Norton does that all the time. Like, I'll go over and say hello to him and see what he's doing, and he'll be in the middle of the sketch, and we'll be talking about something that's completely unrelated to what he's drawing or anything else that's going on. He just sits there and just chats and doodles. Well, not doodle, but he's putting in all this detail into a sketch. I'm like, how can you do that? Like, if that were me, I'm like you. Like, I would have to just shut off everything around me and just be so singularly focused on that piece of art to make it look not like crap. So yeah, I'm always astonished by the guys that can do that too. That's wild.
I'm always astonished by the person that can hold the conversation with the creator for that amount of time. Because here's the thing. When I'm in Artist Alley, and I adore Artist Alley, totally, like when Jim was saying that, I love doing that. But I'm like the creepy voyeur because I'm like watching in those moments because I want to see the sketch drawn because I'm so in awe of the talent. But I'm listening to the person who's carrying on this lengthy conversation with them and being like, I'm always the idiot that walks up. I can talk for multiple hours on this show. No problem at all. I get in front of a creator, whether it's somebody I know or not. It's somebody who's brand new to me. And I'm like sitting there, bookie, I'm good. Trying to find that cool thing to say that might be relevant to starting a conversation. And it's ultimately, I'm failing miserably, but yet I love the experience of being there and watching other people's conversations, seeing those moments that they have together. And so I am. I'm like the creepy voyeur. So watch out for me when you see me. But that's part of my experience.
It's funny you say that too, because I've been on both sides. Like, there are some guys where I can talk to them if I've known them long enough where I can go up and I can carry on the conversation. If it's someone I don't know or I've never met before, I'm that voyeur, like, weirdo type guy. I'm not trying to be weird, but like, I'll just be sitting there staring, like, just watching them draw, and then they'll look up and I'll just have this ridiculous, cheesy looking grin on my face that looks like I maybe have like a burlap sack in my backpack that I'm going to throw over their head. Like, hey, that creepy Pee-wee Herman, Pee-wee's Big Adventure clown just staring at him, waving with that terrifying smile.
You know what I think drives a lot of that too, though, is I'm very well aware, and I think it's like a compassionate side, and I think we all have this to a certain extent if we're aware of how long they've been sitting there, and I don't want to ask that same question that everybody's asked, and I ultimately end up doing it, but
yeah.
I'm like I want to say that one thing that's going to make their day move along a lot faster. And I ultimately fail every single time, but that really is what drives it, because I'm watching this person. I'm like, okay, they just 20 people just went up to them before me, and I want them to be 21 to be one where like there's a spark or there's a connection or it makes them feel like it was worth coming there. And I fail every single time, but it's part of the being in awe of the talent in the industry, because I think the talent's just at an all-time high. And it's just fun to be there and to see that and to be in awe of it. And whether it's a small show or a huge show, I always get that vibe from a convention whenever I'm around the creative process of comics, because it's not something that I'm not a comic creator. I'm a fan. And I know that that's not a talent that I have. I'm the audience that they're trying to reach out to. So it's that kind of relationship, and I like having that contact and connection, even if it is creepy for their end when it comes to me.
Well, to be fair, the guy that is standing there smiling and doesn't know what to say, I'm sure is far less creepy than the guy that comes up and says, "Hey, will you draw my character?" or "Would you draw Wonder Woman covered in glue?" or that sort of thing. So, it's all part, and even those guys, it's all part of the experience, and it's all part of sharing the community and just being out there amongst for lack of a better term, our people, right? And spending time and sharing the passion that we all have. So.
When people go to Summit City, what would you like to have them walk out remembering?
I want them to have had a great day, a great day at the show, whether they, had a good time and got to participate in a panel, or they got some really great sketches, or they met a creator that, they've admired for a while, or, they found something new. At the basic level, I want that. Just for them to be happy and to have their admission fee be well spent, and and for them to want to come back. And and on the slightly loftier side, if they're new to comics, if they're someone who just sort of stumbled into the show because it's something to do downtown and it's something new, then I hope it leads them to a comic shop, or a bookstore where they buy comics. I mean, I don't care so long as they're reading comics. And then on the really lofty side, I guess maybe it's not really lofty, but to me it's lofty. I want them to have a little bit of what I have and what I feel about comics. And as silly as it may sound, like there was a couple of times last year where some local media people came out and they were interviewing me about the show, and I got talking about comics. And, I didn't think I was babbling, but, I just got talking about comics and talking about why they are important and what they mean to me. And, I started to get misty and a little choked up. So, because, it really is just so important to me. Fortunately I didn't break down, openly weep, in front of the CBS affiliate cameras or anything, embarrassing like that. But that's where my heart is, and on the loftiest side, I want people to come in, and at least maybe people who even, understand a little bit, to walk away with a little piece of how I feel about comics and a little bit of that passion if they don't have it already. So, I don't know how realistic that is, but that's the goal that I've built up in my head that I want people to have. I want them to know what I know and see what I see, and understand why it's the greatest medium ever. It's to me, it's better than music, it's better than TV, it's better than movies, it's better than stage theater, all of those things combined, because it is all of those things combined into one pretty little package, and you can have it any way you want it. So that's the biggest thing I want people to walk away from. But on the most basic level, I just want them to walk away happy and to have something that means something to them personally if they don't get the bits that mean so much to me personally.
The Summit City Comic-Con is June 18th, 2011 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Grand Wayne Center, 120 West Jefferson Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it's summitcitycomiccon.com. And if you haven't been to a convention before, because a lot of our listeners will mention, through emails and on the forums, they've never been to a convention. These are great conventions. My first convention was a local convention like this, where it was, and I loved that because you mentioned community, and that was something I really enjoyed about going to that. I felt like I was a part of something. And it's something when you go back year after year, you start seeing a lot of the same faces, and you start, building relationships with those people. When you go to panels, you'll see people reference things that happened at panels from the previous years, and there's, when you're waiting in line and you're sitting out there, there's a camaraderie that grows from all that. And I've noticed that at, big or small, whatever conventions I'm at, the ones that I attend, where I attend them year after year, it's one of the fun things about coming back to a convention that you did the previous year is that sense of belonging. And that is something that I'm really excited about with the Summit City Comic-Con. I love your passion for comics and how that's a driving force. behind the convention because I think that's something that's needed with conventions nowadays. Because I do think that comics is a medium that really has an endless ability to be able to spread out to people once you put them in their hands. Because I see it as a third grade teacher. When you give a comic to kids, they go gaga over them. You guys just did a Boom sale recently. Where you were selling a lot of the Boom hardcovers at a discount. So I grabbed a bunch of them from my classroom. My kids are eating those things up, which I think is just a great thing about comics. Every time I grab them from my classroom, and these are kids, we talk about nowadays with all the competition with video games and with media and stuff like that. I don't buy into any of that because once you give them to somebody, and it's the appropriate thing for them, you can't just give somebody any comic. You got to give them one that they're going to be into. And really pay attention to what their interests are. But these are kids who, I picked up the Boom Kids stuff from you guys. They love them. And this is what a convention's all about to me. It's about walking through the floor, making that connection with a type of property or type of comic that you never knew was out there, and walking with maybe a book that's going to be your best pull.
Yeah, I agree. And it's an amazing thing when you do give a comic to a kid or you give it to someone who's never had one before, and then it hooks them, and then they realize, oh my God, this is amazing. Or, and even if it's something like, like those Boom Studios, Pixar books or something like that. If it's something that just gives them that base connection, to The Incredibles or to Finding Nemo or Cars or whatever, that's the end. And then they'll find their way from there, and they'll find all sorts of new things, and they'll find they can find anything they want, and it's a beautiful thing. So, and not to continue to go on too much about the show, but last year that was another thing that I was so happy about because we do kids under 12 get in for free, and I would say about 45 to 50% of our attendance was kids. From ages whatever to, 13, 14, 15 years old. So we had so many young people there who either their parents brought them out or it was just something for because they love comics or the parents thought it was something that their kids may enjoy. And that made me so happy because we had so many kids just roaming around the floor and going up and meeting, Art won't be there this year, unfortunately, but, going up and seeing guys like Art Baltazar. Who is, an incredible showman for kids anyway, but seeing guys like Art and Dan Davis, who draws the Batman Brave and the Bold comic and Scooby-Doo and stuff, and, the kids having an opportunity to make a connection with those guys who are making the books that are, quite literally for them and the ones that, they recognize on the same level as those Boom books. So, hopefully we'll have that same sort of feel this year too, with lots and lots of kids on the floor, because that just tickles me to death to have that many kids out there interested in the books that and the medium that the three of us grew up on and love.
Zach, one thing I want to make sure we shout out is Mystery Solved, your webcomic. This is really cool. It's mysterysolvedcomic.com, and there's going to be a link right in our show notes, and it'll be on our website and on our website in the webcomics section as well. But tell us a little bit about Mystery Solved. How did this come about? Because this is right up my alley. I'm a fan of the whole pulp adventure genre and things like that. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is the type of comic that I'm into. It's also the type of taking it out of comics. I also really enjoy this in film serials. I really enjoy this in television and video games, and it kind of fits my whole interest.
Yeah, it's born out of a lot of different things. Previously to Mystery Solved, I had written a superhero comic that sort of moved to hiatus because, costs with printing and that sort of thing. But after that, shortly after I started writing that, I started thinking about another project, the next project that I wanted to do, and I had already made the decision that it would be a webcomic. And I'm very much like you. I love those old pulp adventure serials. So, I've got plenty of Shadow and Doc Savage stuff, on my bookshelf. And, I love the Indiana Jones movies and all that sort of thing. So that was a big influence. I wanted to do an adventure strip. But for as much as I wanted to do an adventure strip, I had tried working on a couple of different things and pitched a few ideas just to myself and tried writing some things down, and it just wasn't clicking. And then I was getting out some old VHS tapes that we had got from my mom and dad's house, and we had all these Rocky and Bullwinkle tapes when they first started releasing those volumes. And there's some stuff on there that's not just Rocky and Bullwinkle, but it's got some of the Dudley Do-Right cartoons on them as well. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, but there's a character on there called Commander McBragg.
Oh, yeah.
and Commander McBragg is one of my favorite cartoon characters ever. You know, he's just that pompous doofus who goes around on these different adventures, and you always know how they're going to be solved, or that he's going to solve them in some absurd way, and you know that there's just going to be some silliness, and it's always just a short, 2 to 3, maybe 4 minute bit. And I love Commander McBragg. I just adore him. And so I was like, man, I would love to do a Commander McBragg comic strip or one similar to that. So I started thinking about Commander McBragg. And then I started thinking about, my other interests and how I wanted to present this. And I'm also a skeptic. So, in terms of, I don't believe in a Bigfoot. I'm sorry. But, I buy the scientific explanations for Bigfoot and the Chupacabra and ghosts and all that sort of thing. So I thought to myself, well, I would love to do a skeptic comic too. So what if I mixed the two? So what if I took an adventure strip and then with that Commander McBragg twist and then added in the element of skepticism where it's sort of an all ages, almost quasi educational type strip. It's like, that's perfect. And then since my cartooning abilities escaped me long ago, I hit up a lot of friends and said, hey, would you be willing to participate in this with me? I can't draw, but I feel like I'm a competent enough writer. And fortunately, I've had some great people agree and come onto the book. So the series was the characters were designed by Jim Miller, Big Jim, who, if guys don't know him from the message boards and stuff, Big Jim worked on Ed, Edd, and Eddy. He was as a storyboard artist for the life of the show. And then he does some other animation, direction, and production and storyboarding now. So Jim did I gave Jim my descriptions of all the characters, and Jim did the initial designs, and he did the first story about the Cottingley Fairies, which is actually it's based mostly on a true story about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes. He had this bizarre notion. He believed that there were fairies floating around the backyard of one of his friends, and it turned out that it was his friend's 2 daughters who had just quite literally cut pictures of fairies out of a book and then posed with them and took photographs, and then they showed the photographs to their parents, and their parents were completely bamboozled. And but Doyle bought it too, and he was convinced that there were fairies floating around. And there is, if I'm recalling the story correctly, Houdini was involved as well, because Houdini and Doyle had this sort of love-hate relationship where they were great friends, but they were rivals because Doyle's wife was a spiritualist and believed that she could, she was a medium and could contact ghosts, but Houdini didn't buy it. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent. So that was the first one, and Jim did that one. And then I've been really fortunate to work with guys like Dave Wachter and Steve Bryant, who has a story coming up now, and Dave DeWanch and Andy Jewett, and just a whole host of really terrific people. And speaking of those Boom books, Alan Gladfelter, the guy who drew Cars for a long time for Boom, is actually doing a story for me as well. His will be coming up. He's like 2 or 3 stories down the line. So that's sort of where everything came from. And just sort of mashing all of those seemingly disparate elements together into just one, hopefully cohesive or series of strips. So,
well, what drew me in, I've been totally missing this one. And when you were mentioning all the artists that have worked on this before, I'm like, well, these are all people I love. But Steve Bryant, I'm a Steve Bryant junkie. And when I found out, Steve Bryant's doing, the artwork on this webcomic, I'm like, oh, let me check it out. And then when I was looking over the list, I'm like, first of all, it was you. And I'm like, how did I miss this? So then when I first started talking on this, I'm like, I want to talk about Mystery Solved, because I said, I've just discovered this, and I'm like a kid in a candy store, because I love when I discover a webcomic and there's a lot of content already there. Because, now I'm not just reading one or two tentatively as far as like saying, okay, am I going to keep following this or whatever? I've read so much of this now that I'm invested. Like, this is cool. I love the Colonel. I love that with each artist, it adds its own unique flavor to it, which is the neat thing that I think is great about this strip. Like, it all feels like it's interconnected, but there's like a unique stamp that goes along with each story. Like, the artist really kind of delves into what is the theme of the story and all that. I'm a fan. This is Mystery Salt. And the best part for anybody listening out there, it's free. Go check it out.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to hear that people enjoy it, especially people, whose opinions I respect, like yours and Jim's. So thank you so much. That really does mean a lot to me. And that's actually a really exciting part of the strip for me too, is because when I write these scripts, I get to write, or at least make an attempt to write to the strengths of each artist. So like the Bigfoot story, like Dave Wachter had to draw the Bigfoot story. Like, I could not have anyone else draw Bigfoot but Dave. He had to. And the story that's running now about the crystal skulls, I mean, that had to be Steve Bryant. That had to be Steve's work. So it's really cool to see each of their different takes, and like you said, putting their own stamp on it. Because sometimes, the Colonel has a little bit more of a husky Teddy Roosevelt type look about him, right? And then there's other times where he's like the short, fat, pompous Commander McBragg looking type. And it's so fun to see each of their takes on it. And the great thing too is and brilliance of Jim Miller's character designs is it doesn't matter who draws it. Like, you already hear the voice in your head for the character, and whatever tweaks one artist puts on it, the way Jim designed the characters, you still recognize them. It's like Spider-Man. It doesn't matter who draws Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man. And Batman. It doesn't matter who's drawing Batman unless they've done something just insane. Like, that it's Batman, and it doesn't matter who's drawing it, and the voice is the same in your head. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to Jim for putting in the effort to do what he did with those, to hopefully, and in my opinion, create that feel with the Colonel and with Jenkins and with Kensington, and so yeah, and it's just so fun seeing all the different takes and different worlds that get built for the Colonel to go on his investigations through.
It's really awesome. Do you have a lot of, like, when you're doing a webcomic like this, especially when you're doing them arc-based like this, where you're like, I've got an arc for this artist, I've got an arc for this artist, do you have the stories crafted first and then approach the artist? Do you craft the story with the artist in mind? How does that work in this particular case?
It varies. It depends on the person that I'm approaching. I have a list of stories and plots that I'm ready to go on at any given moment, as I plot them all out ahead of time, of course. And then usually when I'll approach someone, I'll just say, hey, look, I have these stories. Are there any that interest you? And then, they'll take the one that interests them, and then I'll sort of craft it for them. Now, there are some cases, though, like Steve's, where he and I talked about it ahead of time, and I said, hey, look, I would really like for you to do this Crystal Skulls one, because it's got an Indiana Jones, vibe, and the Indiana Jones analog looks like George Lucas dressed as Indiana Jones, so I get to pick on all these different aspects. So Steve had to draw that one. We talked about it, of course, but he was the exception and not the rules. Most guys, I let them pick the story out of my catalog, so to speak, and then I build the script for them.
I love it, because his story was my introduction. Because I literally jumped out because Steve Bryant. I'm a big Athena Voltaire fan, so I'm like, okay, this pulled me right in. Then I'm looking through the list of artists, and I love this character. This character would make a great animated series. Like, it's that kind of style of characters. When you're talking Commander McBragg, I love that you said that was the inspiration, because when I first read this, I was thinking animated series, and to hear that your passion for this character that I grew up with, Commander McBragg, I didn't think that at the time. Then when you said it, I'm like immediately making the connection. I'm like, okay, I get it, which is awesome. But I think that's a character it's missing today. We don't have a lot of that type of character. So I think it's really kind of a cool thing about the strip is that, like, this is kind of a resurgence of this style of character.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's so funny. he's just a character that I've always gravitated to, and I love the pomposity of the way he talks and the way he carries himself, and he's sitting in his little den or office or whatever you want to call it, and there's these animal heads all over the wall and a roaring fire, and some sort of feminine sounding Englishman sitting in a sitting in a comfy chair across from him. He spins that big globe and he just rams his finger down on it to stop. It's like, there, South Africa. and then he just goes into this really long explanation about being in South Africa and his crazy adventures. And I agree with you. There's just not enough of that anymore. So and those are the things that excite me the most.
Well, Zach, is there anything else you want to shout out about the Summit City Comic Con or Mystery Solved, or anything that we haven't mentioned that you want to make sure to get on the show for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, Summit City, just come on out, spend the day with us at the Grand Wayne Center. And not only spend the day with us at the Grand Wayne Center, but Friday night, if you have maybe never been to the DCBS retail store, we're having our pre-show party there at the DCBS retail store, which is at 10202 -C Coldwater Road in Fort Wayne. So we'll be there starting about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we'll just go on until people are ready to go. And Saturday night after the convention, if you're staying in town or if you're staying the night, if you're willing to stay late, come out with us after the show and hit up the after party, because it's a really good time, like a really good time. And if Hillary is able to come back, spending time in a bar with Hillary Barda will change your life. And I'm pretty certain changed mine. I cannot look at certain bars and certain places in the city again, the same way again, because of Hillary. So, but even so, it's still a great time, and it's a great time to socialize and spend time with people that maybe you didn't have a lot of time to spend with on the show floor during the day if you were too busy. So come out and do those things with us as well, and just be at the show and hang out and say hello, and I'll give you a hug. But that's it, because my wife won't let me do anything more. And but just spend the day and hang out and be cool. And then for Mystery Solved, come on over and check it out. If you have any love in your heart for sort of that fun Commander McBragg meets Scooby-Doo type feel, that sort of that gives the rational scientific explanations for certain phenomenon, then check it out and leave comments and let me know what you think, and check out. I hope my words keep you there and the stories keep you there, but check out the great art too, because there's some just brilliant guys on there who are really deserving of your attention. And that's all I got, man.
All right. Well, Zach, first of all, I want to thank you guys for your support of our podcast, but also thank you for your time today, because we really, really appreciate you joining us.
No, anytime, brother. We're always happy to support you guys, and it's a good thing to be a part of. And thank you guys for letting me come on and talk about my show and talk about the comic. It's a great thing to do. So thank you so much.
No, it was our pleasure. Definitely, thank you.
Oh no, you don't.
Sponsoring us this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. As I mentioned, you're going to want to be checking this week. DCBService.com is going to be updating their website with the brand new details, with the brand new deals for the month. Jim, I get a little tongue-tied sometimes. So that's our friends over at DCBService.com. They're your pre-order source, and to me, it's especially with 52 titles coming out in the future from DC, I'm really glad I'm shopping at DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, Batman and Robin, the deluxe hardcover, Volume 3, Batman Must Die. Regularly $24.99, 38% off, only $15.49. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. Jim, do you use that? Do you use that deal as a way to get trades? Do you, grab
big time.
Yeah. That, to me, the shipping savings, to me, is a big incentive point, because you're already getting, 38% off on the books, but then if you cut out shipping, it's really a great deal.
I will stockpile trades, when we talk about a trade, I'll write it down. And then when I know I have enough, I do a nice big order, boom, and it's a great bundling.
I've been doing a lot from either DCB Service or from In Stock Trades of trades for my classroom. of books that are appropriate for my kids at school. And it's really great as a teacher to be able to get them at a discount because my kids beat up the books in a good way. They're reading them and enjoying them, which is what you want. If you're going to put comics in your classroom, you want the kids to read them. So a lot of times they'll have deals on hardcovers from like Boom or DC or trades from DC, like Tiny Titans and stuff like that, and Super Friends. And
Watchmen.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, for third graders, Watchmen. But no, it's the honest truth is, if there's books like you were talking about that I want for me, I'll bundle them together a lot of times with books for my students to get that $50 mark, and it's a nice win-win for me because I'm trying to do it on a budget. I got to say, as a teacher, I love seeing my kids reading comics and trades. So if you've got a child that's in your family, whether it's your own or cousin or something like that, when you're doing, if you got to just tip yourself over that mark a lot of times at InStockTrades.com, look for something that might be appropriate for a kid in your life, and grab one of those books and spread the comic love, because that's good for all of us as fans, more comic readers and more awareness of it. Or for a friend, get something for a friend that maybe you think they would be interested in from a genre that they're particularly interested in. And a lot of times by the time you get done with shipping, the extra trade that you're buying or extra hardcover that you're buying is pretty close to free, and then you're passing on some comic love. So I've noticed that a lot of times with that shipping deal. So that's InStockTrades.com. Jim, our next episode is going to be Longbow Hunters, and I want to thank everyone for your patience on this one. We're joined by friend of the show, Peter Rios from Comic Geek Speak, and we do talk about Longbow Hunters. I delayed it 1 week because this news, I think, was something that, as listeners, you probably all wanted to hear our thoughts on now, because it's timely. So we decided to bump that because it's one of those, extra special report shows. So I hope you really enjoyed this one. And Longbow Hunters is already recorded and for sure next week. This actually works out really well because with next week being my last week of school, I really need kind of something already recorded for that. So this ended up actually working out the same way that I wanted it to, just a week later. So we will see everyone next week with Green Arrow Longbow Hunters.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Fated for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. What you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Denon Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see.